The story begins with rain falling on the ground and a hand touching the ground as the raindrops fall. A woman is pointing a sword at a young man, and he thinks she wants to eliminate him. She stares at him, grips her sword tighter, and drives it deeper into his body. The young man coughs up plasma and looks at his hand, now also covered in plasma, and thinks she looks so beautiful. And precisely because he cannot have her, he reaches out and touches her face. Then, the woman steps away from his body and just watches him. The young man thinks she is cursed, and the system notifies that the marriage has been cancelled. Request for Dekulin's elimination issued. Someone playing this game says, "Thank God, finally they stopped talking." It took ages to fix that bug. He finally managed to fix that error that kept happening in the marriage cancellation storyline. This is Kim Woo-jin. He says he's almost free from these intermediate overtime shifts and is a game developer. A console game development studio in South Korea, known as a wasteland for console games, Rue emerged like a storm, releasing one hit after another, quickly becoming a globally recognized studio. The game he's testing now is a AAA title that Rue has poured all its investments and profits into making. In other words, they're screwed if this game doesn't do well. The essence of this game is that the difficulty and story change depending on the player's choices. Perhaps that's why, despite being a single-player game with advanced AI and named characters, it's getting a lot of attention from the community. Furthermore, there are dozens of classes like Knight, Mage, Explorer, Demon, Demon Hunter, Noble, King, and more. Thanks to this great variety of classes, players have the freedom to be whatever they want in the game. In other words, if this game succeeds, they'll be swimming in money. And the protagonist thinks that, at the same time, if the game flops, the studio will fall with it. He better check the character settings again. The reason he's been doing overtime for the past few months is this guy, the main character of the episode who's finally bug-free. The elimination of Dekulane. Dekulane von Gram Ukleine, one of the mid-level bosses in the game and also a named villain. There were countless bugs to fix in all possible storylines with this character, and they finally managed to eliminate him without anything going wrong. The reason for his elimination in this route is being stabbed by his fiancée, which makes sense considering everything he did. Then someone calls out to him. It's a woman, asking how the testing is going. This person is the team lead of the development team he's part of. In Yu Ara, she's also his ex-girlfriend. They were together for 7 years, always felt happy together and all that. Kim is naturally lazy, but unlike him, she's a workaholic since birth. Her ambition helped him become a better person. But in the end, they broke up, and he couldn't change even with all her effort. In says she heard he was having trouble with some bugs. Woo thinks that 6 months after the breakup, he heard she had someone new, and he assumes things are going well with the guy again. Yu says rumors spread fast in the company and agrees that yes, things are going well. Jin thinks it's not great to hear that from her and says he hopes she marries the guy. The team lead tells him to stop being sarcastic and focus on the bugs. They have to make more changes. Some things changed at the end of the story. The protagonist asks again and complains it's always the same, wondering if she's sure that Dekulane is a mid-boss because he seems more like a Reaper. That's the charm of both the character and the game. Dekulane becomes stronger as the story progresses. The game's difficulty depends on the player's choices in the end. In asks if he knew the model for this character was him, and whether he didn't notice they were identical. Kim replies he only met the artist a couple of times. Yu says that's why she'll eliminate him as soon as she sees him in-game, because their personalities are similar too, and his last words were insulting her, calling her cursed, just like him. The team lead tells him to stop the nonsense and asks how the gameplay experience is going. Woo says the game itself is cool, but he doesn't like that the studio's fate is in his hands. Ara says he doesn't need to worry about that because he'll definitely do well. The gameplay trailer was a hit. Then Jin looks to the side and asks if that's her boyfriend over there. Says he's waiting for her. Yu says it's already that late. The protagonist asks what she's doing, tells her not to keep him waiting and to go to him. The team leader replies yes, that she's going, and wishes him good luck. Kim says goodbye. Later that night, time passes, and Woo, still in the same place, says he's going to test Dekulane again. He says the artist went too far asking if they're really saying this guy is based on him, and notes that his stats are a mix of child prodigy and average mage. When he was a child, Dekulane was called a genius and placed on a pedestal, but he was like any other mage. Because of his arrogance and noble background, he ended up with the worst personality, and Woo wonders how he could even be considered human. Jin keeps thinking that he's supposed to get stronger as the story progresses, but he's already surrounded by people who hate him. He wonders why they didn't put that in another attribute or personality trait, something less obvious. He says the model is supposedly based on himself and goes to check the comprehension attribute, wondering if it's something like empathy. He thinks that this character might have become more empathetic than him, at least. In the end, the protagonist admits he added everything that seemed good, but now that it's done, he feels a bit embarrassed. He He figures it's better to revert things to the original before something goes wrong and decides to just get some rest. Then a message arrives, startling Kim, who wonders if it's the writer. He replies asking if there's anything the writer wanted to change about the model since it can still be altered. The writer replies no, he was just waiting to take a look. Woo wonders what he means and asks if he's talking about seeing the finished model. The writer laughs and says no, just look out the window. Jin wonders what might be outside the window. He looks up at the sky and notices something strange. The light is so bright it reflects off his face and he wonders what the hell is going on. It's as if the sky has a hole in it. Then skulls and other strange dark things begin to appear. Kim asks himself where he is and who this is. A voice calls him child and tells him not to forget, always stay alert about him, and that Dekulin is not tameable. He might be quiet now, but he could do something at any moment. He's just hiding his true talents for now. He is a vile villain. Then, in another place, a voice tells Dekulin to get up. The young man opens his eyes. A girl asks how long he plans to keep sleeping and what kind of person he calls himself. Woo thinks he gets it. It's been a few days since he took over this body, but it still feels like a dream. The girl asks how long he's going to lock himself up over a woman, if he's trying to shame the entire family or what. She says she'll leave the documents there and tells him to get moving unless he wants to get fired. Jin thinks that ever since the day that weird sky appeared, he's been in this strange body, in a strange place. It's been a week. He's inside the game he created. The familiar settings confirmed it. And now, the worst character in this game, who can't escape elimination no matter what. A man destined to be erased, he became the villain. Dekulin. He's in Eucline Mansion, in Dekulin's room. At first, the protagonist thought this was all a dream, but after a while, the realism of everyday life made him accept the truth. He wonders if this is some kind of afterlife for being struck by lightning. Either way, one thing is certain. He literally became the villain of the game he was developing. Dekulin von Gram Eucline. He's the mid-boss of the game. No matter which route you take, he's the root of all problems, the enemy of everyone, and he's harmed countless characters. Kim wonders why the hell he had to end up as this sworn villain. He thinks another big problem is that he has no idea where in the story he is right now. All he knows is the total mana he has, but not how fast it runs out. He can't prepare for something like this. And he's not joking when he says that everyone, including himself, tested the game hundreds of times during development. This character only survived once. He was nothing more than a villain created to be eliminated and serve his purpose as a mid-boss. Woo asks if that's the document they left behind. It's written about the basic understanding of magic and skill use in relation to mana. Yariel von Gram Eucline is the woman who left this stack of papers while Jin was sleeping. She's Dekulin's half-sister, and in his place, she's the one who acts as head of the Eucline house. She doesn't have a good relationship with Dekulin, and the woman Yariel mentioned is probably Julie. The protagonist assumes something has already happened between him and his fiancée, and Dekulin's sister also said that if he didn't want to get fired from his fancy job as a professor, he better get up immediately. Kim notices she said professor, and the lecture is today, so he should go. He's never given a lecture before, but he needs to do something to gather more information. The system notifies him. Primary survival objective become necessary for the game's progression. Secondary mission, university lecture, shop coins. The words float above Woo's face as he wakes up. Because of this, and Yariel, he feels he needs to start doing something. There are ways Dekulin could die because of Yariel. Anyway, those shop coins are really important. Jin wonders what he should lecture about since it's kind of an annoying concern, but it's okay. This body has the comprehension attribute. The system says comprehension is a unique grade trait with the ability to understand anything, can be activated by consuming mana. Before becoming Dekulin, the protagonist gave him this skill so he could develop a bit of empathy. Since it's a unique grade trait that only appears later in the game, it likely has hidden effects. Still in the same place, Kim is getting dressed and says these clothes and this bathroom look weird, but he's using them naturally. It feels like he's lived as Dekulin all his life. Normally he'd feel strange wearing clothes like these, but now they seem elegant and even bring him comfort. These are other traits of his: intimidation, dignity, and aesthetic sense. It's as if they're telling him this body now belongs to him. He doesn't even feel like saying anything that might be considered rude. The formality he once found stiff now feels natural. Though his main goal is to gather information, this first lecture doesn't feel out of the ordinary. He himself is now a noble and upper-class member of society. Woo is a totally normal man from South Korea, objectively tall and handsome. And on top of that, some adjectives others use to describe him: a pathetic, lazy idiot. That's who he is, and he won't let himself get lost, so he won't let his guard down. Jin gets into the car and thinks he's never ridden in such an expensive one before. And thinking about expensive cars reminds him of that one time, which still makes him mad. The protagonist looks to the side and notices there's a boy and wonders who he is. The boy calls him Professor and hands him a document saying, "Here it is." Kim wonders if he's Deculane's assistant, or maybe his secretary, and asks if he's a sorcerer. The boy replies that he's served him for 3 years. Wu thinks he assumed this document was the lecture material, but it's just a script to follow. It contains all the necessary information for the lecture from beginning to end. He doesn't believe Deculane prepared this by himself. Considering how proud and untalented he is, this boy must have done all the work, and he says it was a good job. The boy looks confused. Jin tells him to rest a bit before they arrive, and the boy says, "Understood." Deculane has a dark aura, and the protagonist wonders how terrible he himself must be. He even feels sick just for having praised someone. He wonders if that's the real Deculane, and he thinks he felt it while leaving the mansion, as if Deculane's consciousness was starting to invade his own. The driver says they've arrived. Kim steps out of the car and sees that this is Deculane's workplace, the Imperial University. He wonders if the location mentioned in the letter was Rodeo Hall. In Rodeo Hall, a lecture hall, a voice says they'll finally get to hear a lecture from Professor Deculane, and they heard he was a master of spell interpretation. Apparently, he was a prodigy as a child. Wu asks for everyone's attention and introduces himself, saying his name is Deculane von Graham Ukleine, and that he will conduct the lecture as the head professor of the university's magic tower. And now the lecture will begin. The girls are impressed and say he's handsome and smart too, and that's really cool. Someone annoyed wonders if that's really cool and thinks at least they've finally met. This is a girl who believes he is her father's sworn enemy and that Deculane is a damned bastard. 3 years ago, her father took his own life. After dedicating years to spell interpretation research, he took his life out of shock when his work was stolen. The person who stole it became publicly known as the genius of spell interpretation. And yes, she's talking about that damn Deculane, but there was nothing they could do. She lost everything after her father's death. She was once a noble, but lost not just her house, but her territory and all her possessions. In the end, they had nowhere to go. That was when she swore to herself that she would get revenge on that bastard. After that day, she worked tirelessly, day and night, until she was finally accepted into the Imperial University where Deculane taught. And she knows something no other student does. His interpretation skills are fake, all stolen from her father. After destroying her family, she wonders how he can be so indifferent while occupying the place that once belonged to her father. She wants to expose his lies and eliminate him right now, but she needs to hold back. She has to prepare better for the perfect revenge. The protagonist asks for everyone's attention and says the class is about to begin, requesting to be allowed to introduce himself. He is a veteran professor at the Magic Tower. As a monarch rank mage capable of commanding the elements, he was assigned as the special professor. And he's sure everyone already knows, but magic is largely divided into 3 properties and 9 categories. The properties are origin, the foundation of magic, elements, the physical composition, and material, the middle ground. The categories are summoning, spiritualism, destruction, support, manipulation, malleability, enchantment, harmony, and finally, specialization. What a mage needs for this. Kim thinks it's going better than expected. Not only is this his first class, but he's also teaching magic theory, a subject he's unfamiliar with, even though he's reading from a simple script he prepared beforehand. Yet it feels like he has a perfect understanding of the material. The traits of intimidation and dignity draw everyone's attention, while elitism prevents him from feeling nervous under all that pressure. Instead of being overwhelmed, he feels naturally in control. Deculane's traits actually make him a suitable educator. Wu continues by saying that mana has different applications depending on where it's stored in the body. Normally, mages store mana in the brain, where it's easier to visualize spells. Knights, on the other hand, store mana in the heart, the organ that sends energy throughout the body. And finally, the Dantian is the most suitable mana reservoir for everyone, since it's where the internal and external connect most deeply. What he's trying to say is simple. Hard work is important, but if talent isn't suitable, then careful choices and focus are also necessary. He thinks this is fitting advice for Deculane. After all, he wasn't actually that talented. Even though he has 3,375 mana, there's a named character with a starting mana of 30,000, giving advice he himself most needed. How ironic. He ends the class by saying that's all for today, and one last thing. He's worried about this final line and wonders if he should read it. Real Deculane wouldn't have. Jin asks if there are any questions. The students are silent. The protagonist thinks no one seems to have questions until someone calls out. It's the girl. She says a mysterious spell was found in the mage dormitory last night. Some people say it was the act of a demon, like the spell interpretation genius. Kim asks if she's really part of the magic tower. The girl asks why he's asking. Wu replies that if so, proper etiquette would be to state her affiliation first. He won't answer questions from a child who lacks good manners. Julie calls his name and Jin thinks there's nothing he can do. He just realized how much mana comprehension consumes. His mana is at 2005, 3,375ths. He used 1,300 mana just to understand a simple script. Who knows how much it'll take to interpret a spell he's never seen? The other students laugh at her. Her attempt to stand out failed and Julie asks for a moment. The tower mages are refusing to interpret it, saying the rumor is false, but she believes he can identify the category of this spell. She activates her magic and says she's formally requesting interpretation of the spell. His mana is at 363,375ths. The girl adds that some rookies stayed behind to analyze it but made no progress. If he could just give them a hint. The protagonist says it's a magic barrier and didn't even need to give a hint. It's a magic barrier in the enchantment category. Someone tried to trap them in it, that's all. The system notifies that the secondary mission is complete. Teach at the university. Later, in the university cafeteria, the girl eats and calls him a jerk, thinking she wanted to expose his fake interpretation skills with an unknown spell, and now wonders if instead he called her rude just because she forgot to say her name. She thinks maybe he was caught off guard. While trying to bluff his way out, he called it an enchantment spell. Enchantment spells are extremely complex, so they usually require an intermediary. She wonders how it could be an enchantment spell if there was no intermediary item. The girl thinks what she showed was an exact copy of the magic circle drawn in front of the dormitory doors. Although people were agitated about it at first, it ended up becoming research material for the rookies, and she says she knew he was a fraud, until someone calls her by name, Epherine. The redhead says the magic circle from yesterday worked when they restructured the spell as a barrier. Epherine looks surprised. The redhead says she's impressed. They were too scared of the professor to ask anything, but Epherine had the courage. Epherine tells her to wait and asks if she really means it was a barrier. The redhead replies yes, and asks if Professor Deculin isn't amazing. How did he know it was an enchantment spell without an intermediary? Epherine thinks no way, that's impossible. The redhead thanks her and says they'll submit a report about it and include her name. Epherine thanks her and thinks it must have been luck. In the end, it only boosted his reputation. She looks at a paper that says, Advanced Elemental Magic Comprehension, 5 credits, Professor Deculin. She realizes it's a subject taught by Deculin this semester, and she remembers the saying, know your enemy and yourself and you'll never be defeated. She's going to have to mentally prepare to face that idiot every day. And just wait, she's going to expose him. The system notifies secondary mission completed. University lecture, currency stored. The protagonist thinks this could have gone very badly. The moment he looked at the spell, comprehension activated involuntarily. Just looking at the spell's intertwined lines was enough to drain all the remaining mana in his body. And he wasn't even able to understand what kind of spell it was. Even if he had twice the mana he has now, he wouldn't be able to grasp its principles. At least nothing went wrong, until someone approaches and says, It's been a while. Kim looks and thinks, this person, white hair and shining eyes. He's seen them many times through his monitor. Julie von Dea Freyden. She asks how he's been. Wu thinks she's Deculin's fiancée and a named character who will eventually rise to the peak of knighthood. He didn't expect to see her there and says he's not sure. Let's say he's doing fine. Dea asks if he's really okay, even after breaking the promise they made a week ago. Jin wonders what promise. He has no idea what she's talking about. It's best to dodge this and says he doesn't remember, so if she'll excuse him. Freyden steps in front of him and asks if he's trying to run away again, like before. The protagonist thinks she's not going to let him pass. He says maybe he forgot because of the fever he had and asks if she could tell him what promise they made. Julie remembers telling him, if you're so confident in yourself and confess your ambitions and arrogance to everyone, then I'll be with you, even if the world collapses. In the present, Dea says she was wrong to trust him and that he can go. Kim looks at her and says, if you'll excuse me. He walks away. Freyden thinks her engagement to Deculin was out of convenience. She recalls someone saying that Deculin, a talented mage, and Julie, a skilled knight, together, their union would bring political and bloodline benefits. With the Euclines and Freydens, 2 noble families, there was no one who could oppose the marriage. Julie thought it was fine. This was for the good of the family, even if she didn't love him. However, both families eventually realized that his talent never existed in the first place. Maybe he didn't want to admit it, but he lied to the world by calling himself a spell analysis genius and becoming a professor. After some incidents, he stopped presenting any achievements. Still, the Euclines and Freydens stayed quiet. She's sure it was because neither family wanted to become gossip. They didn't want the failure to be exposed publicly, but she can't forgive this situation. She was fine with a loveless marriage, but she can't tolerate lies. That's her conviction as a knight, that's all. And Deculane says he was going to do as she asked. He agreed too. And Dea asked if he wasn't going to keep that promise to the end. At the Imperial University, Magic Tower. The Imperial University is the best in this game, and the Magic Department is the top among all others. You could say that the equivalent of the Magic Department in Brazil would be the Engineering Department of USP, and the Magic Tower itself is USP. The protagonist thinks it looks nice, a wide field and a garden full of flowers. It reminds him of a campus in America. His teammates and he spent countless nights together trying to create this atmosphere. It would be really nice if he were experiencing this campus in someone else's body, until someone comes running toward Kim and bumps into him, knocking over the box and falling to the ground. It's the boy who apologizes and says he was in a rush to see his professor. Wu realizes this kid is the same one from before and thinks it might be an ambush, saying, "It's you. Your name was Zoro." The boy replies no, that he's Alan. Jin says he must have been mistaken. At Deculane's office, the protagonist asks if that's why Alan was in a hurry to see him. Alan replies yes, and that this is the sponsor list for the new mages of this year. The Magic Tower is similar to a real-world research lab, so money is needed for magic development. Professors at the tower sponsor new mages they deem worthy. Kim looks and wonders what this is, thinking the name is glowing in gold. He assumes it's because of Deculane's traits. The system notifies Filthy Rich Tycoon, a natural-born tycoon and exceptional financier with unparalleled intuition for profitable things. The more information provided, the more precise the intuition. Then, Sharp Gaze, rare trait, the ability to visually perceive intuition, stats, mana points, and similar elements, mostly used in conjunction with other traits, not alone. Wu thinks this is definitely the combination of Filthy Rich Tycoon and Sharp Gaze. He assumes the person behind that name will bring in a lot of money. There are a few others like that, but she shines the brightest, Ephorine Luna. The main name in this game, according to the devs responsible for her modeling, she lost her father because of Deculane. Jin looks and asks why Ephorine doesn't have a sponsor. Alan replies that he thinks everyone is too scared. The protagonist says he understands and thinks that everyone is worried about what Deculane might do if they sponsor her. He also thinks she's talented enough to get into the Magic Tower even without attending the academy. However, this Ephorine is Deculane's enemy, or rather, Deculane is her enemy. And if things go as they did in the game, he'll meet the same end again. The system notifies Villain's fate. The fate of the villain, the whole world calls for his elimination. However, what doesn't kill him only makes him stronger. In the game, Deculane is eliminated in countless ways. A sword to the heart, a wand to the head, poison in a wine glass, a terrorist bomb. Whatever the method, his death is inevitable. And if he wants to live, he must make different choices. Choices the original Deculane never made. Kim writes on the sheet and hands it over, telling Alan to deliver these and borrow a few books he's about to note down before heading home. Alan says, "Goodbye, Professor," and leaves the office. Wu thinks he'll need a lot of money if he wants to survive. Many of those destined deaths can be overcome with money. Investing in a mage is the only way to earn money. However, that alone isn't enough. There are countless people in the world who hold grudges against him. They'll try to eliminate him whenever they get the chance. So to survive, what he really needs is the only way. He must become strong. However, Deculane's talents are only average. At this rate, he won't be able to handle the future risks unless he prepares properly. He won't survive the many eliminations to come, but he has one advantage: his attributes. Deculane can't control all four elements like he boasts, but he definitely has potential in manipulating the earth and fire elements. And combining earth, fire, and metal results in one of Deculane's other traits, Midas Touch. The system shows info about Midas Touch. It's a unique trait, consuming all the user's mana to unlock the target's potential. Therefore, Deculane's talent in metal manipulation lets him control levitating blades powered by chi. Jin thinks it sounds grand when they say chi-controlled levitating blades, but it's just basic telekinesis. Still, this is definitely not common in this world. What he lacks in raw power can be compensated by manipulating metal properties. But to realize all this, first, he needs to learn manipulation, how to control objects. And now he'll test it. He places his hand over a book and starts releasing mana, causing a large aura to surge around him, growing more powerful. The protagonist thinks the content and spells of basic telekinesis are flowing directly into his mind. Later, still in the same room, Kim notices an item and thinks, maybe now. He makes the item float without touching it and thinks that now that he has memorized the basics of telekinesis and no longer needs a spell to cast, he's experiencing something he had only seen in games like this. Even though this is just the basics, if it stays like this, he won't reach the level he wants even with high-rank telekinesis. He wonders what he should do. What if he engraves magic circles all over his body? In this world, magic circles become stronger the bigger they are, so if he understands everything about his body using comprehension, not just his brain, but his heart and inner core, he'll place magic circles all over to strengthen his telekinesis. Of course, there's a chance his body will become overloaded or suffer side effects, but this body has a trait called Iron Man, which allows it to endure those side effects. The system shows the Iron Man's skill, unique, with innate physical skills and attributes, and a body potential of the highest level. Wu thinks this is only possible for him in this world. His current mana level is 800, it should be enough for a taste. The pressure in the environment grows more intense. Strong winds blow and a loud noise is emitted. Jin thinks he feels a terrible pain, a pain that can't be compared, a pain that feels like all the bones in his body are being crushed and all his muscles torn. Still, he won't falter and won't make a sound. This is the elegance required to be a noble. Later, still in the office, his mana is at 1375th. The protagonist feels incredibly exhausted. He failed because he lacked mana, but he achieved something from it. He now has a magic circle on his shoulder. At this pace, it will take 2 weeks to cover his entire body. 1 month after Deculane's seminar, first day of class, university's magic tower. A voice says this is different from what the seniors said and asks if all his classes are like this. The sign says the professor wants to test their skills and to bring any result from this area overflowing with elements. The students comment that who would have guessed he'd just send them to study on their own and ask if they're supposed to do something with the elements. That's why they're outside, and where's Professor Deculane? Luna thinks it's obvious that this guy is irresponsible for making them study alone on the first day. What kind of idiot does that? Until a girl bumps into her. Ephraim gets irritated and looks back to see who it was, and is surprised to see that the girl is Sylvia von Josephine Ilad. The blonde stares at her, turns around, and walks away. Luna wonders if she didn't recognize her. Somewhere else, surrounded by stones, someone is using magic, and it's Ephraim, wondering what just happened, and thinking that if she's not mistaken, that girl must be from the Ilade family. 10 years ago, the Ilade family, fearing her and her father's potential, used troops to surround their mansion and threaten them, and she wonders how that girl doesn't remember her. Then, Luna notices the structure she was forming breaks and asks what happened, thinking it's as if the mana is being sucked somewhere. She looks to the side and sees Sylvia is using a large amount of mana and asks what she's doing, then realizes she's taking everything she gathered. Josephine ignores her, and Ephraim asks if she's deaf and wonders what's wrong with this girl and why she won't respond. She tells herself to wait and asks why she's pretending not to know her. She says she knew it. There's no way Sylvia doesn't know her after threatening her family and forcing her to give up magic, and asks if she's afraid she'll steal all the attention. Sylvia says she doesn't know her. Luna asks if she's looking down on her. Josephine says she doesn't know her, she only knows her father, that arrogant ex-noble, and heard he lost his life. Luna gets really angry and a bright light bursts. People look surprised. Elfarine releases her magic, causing a huge pressure in the area, and asks what Sylvia said, telling her to repeat it. Sylvia activates her shield. A huge explosion happens, causing a massive impact. Later, still in the same place, the smoke clears and voices ask what happened and if anyone is hurt. Luna is holding the blonde's hair and says she told her to repeat it and asks how she dares insult her father. Josephine tells her to let go. Elfarine says she's going to finish her until a voice asks what that is. Then they look and see an extremely powerful light. People are frightened and Luna asks if that's a void. She thinks that's where the manas collided earlier, and now it's sucking in everything nearby. People say it's going to explode and start running. Luna thinks no. If that really explodes, metal fragments will fly like bullets, and everyone there will die. An explosion occurs. Elfarine uses her shield and wonders what that is. She realizes it's still and asks herself if it stopped. The protagonist is at the scene, and Luna wonders when that guy arrived and why the fragments were frozen like that. Kim releases his energy, preventing them from attacking. The moment Deculane used telekinesis, there were exclamations everywhere. Since they were students learning magic, they couldn't help but admire the beauty of the magic. It was enchantment magic, and no one could deny how dazzling it was. Everything is frozen. Wu asks for everyone's attention, saying they will end today's class there. Everyone, except those who caused the commotion, must leave. Elfarine thinks she's screwed. In the interrogation room, someone approaches and says they arrived first. It's Retlan, professor of the Department of Spiritual Studies, who says that, as expected, those two show a level of dedication that serves as an example to all mages. Relin, professor of the Department of Support Studies, is also there. The president of the university's magic tower, Adeline Sigelian, welcomes both professors and apologizes for the sudden summons, but thanks them for coming so quickly. Retlin asks who it was, Who dared lay hands on the young lady of the Illide family and says that from what he heard it was a commoner who doesn't even attend the academy, just some nameless scum. But he also heard that Professor Deculin managed to resolve things before it turned into chaos. Relin says he heard the same and that it really is impressive. Jin thinks he's blatantly kissing up. All the professors there are skilled at navigating society, so the outcome of this disciplinary meeting is basically already decided. The daughter of the powerful Iladi family and the fallen noble who's practically a commoner, Ephraim, it's obvious who they'll support. So he needs to change the result of this disciplinary hearing. Since earlier he could already see the scarlet energy emanating from Luna, it's only visible to him because he has sharp vision, and it shows that the villain's fate has manifested. The system notifies about the skill, with the description that the fate of a villain is that the entire world wants their elimination, but what doesn't kill only makes stronger. If he can't change the result, his elimination draws near. Somewhere else, a voice announces that the disciplinary meeting between novice mages Ephraim and Sylvia will now begin. Retlan, irritated, asks how she dares cause a conflict within the school and says students could have been hurt if it weren't for Professor Deculin. A voice asks why she started the fight. Luna replies that she can't say. The voice is confused. Ephraim thinks that bastard must be watching from somewhere. He's the reason she can't say anything. Sylvia insulted her father and provoked her in a sly way, but she can't say that in front of him. Retlan asks what kind of joke this is, and if it's some kind of inferiority complex, and says she should have remembered the difference in status between her and Josephine but ignored it. Now it's the other one's turn to speak. Sylvia says that during class she accidentally destroyed Luna's work, which led to an argument. The voice asks if Josephine didn't do it on purpose, and even so, Ephraim caused all that mess. And how does a nameless commoner dare behave like that? Does she have anger issues or something? Another voice says she should be expelled. They can't let such violent behavior slide. Luna thinks it's cold having to listen to all kinds of insults in a mere disciplinary hearing, and all the scolding is directed at her. She couldn't come up with a single excuse. There's no one to protect her. Everything feels so cold, and it's all that guy's fault, Deculin. Adeline says it seems the opinions are aligned and calls for Professor Deculin. As someone who is present, she would like to hear his view before concluding. The protagonist says that he, Deculin, speaks as the head professor of this tower and member of the disciplinary committee. Elfarine thinks it's over. Kim continues by asking if Sylvia believes she wasn't at fault in this incident, and asks again if she really thinks she had no responsibility. Retlan asks what he's saying. Wu says she could have definitely avoided the incident, but she didn't. Or maybe the skills everyone praises so much weren't enough. Sylvia replies that she's sorry, and honestly, she didn't block Luna's strike because she wanted her to get into more trouble. Luna is surprised and wonders why he's not questioning hers. But Josephine, since no matter what, the blame is clearly hers. Retlan says that even so, the attacker is the one at fault. Jin says that if he truly cares about context, then the blame is his. After all, it happened in his class, and asks if Retlan wants him to take responsibility. Retlan replies that of course not. He just thought it was unpleasant. Elfarine thinks he's refuting the professor who was siding with Sylvia and wonders why he's going so far to defend her. The president says, that's enough. The kids need to fight to grow. These kids just became freshmen, so instead of arguing about who's to blame, they'll just let the situation go. No disciplinary action will be taken, and both can leave. Luna is surprised and thinks she was prepared to be expelled. The Deculin she knows would definitely have expelled her, and wonders why. Retlan says, as expected of Deculin, he has an amazing way of analyzing situations, always for the student's sake. Jin looks to the side and sees Elfarine there. She says she has a question and thinks that if he remembers her last name, if he knows her father, and if he knows that he suffered all his life under him until he took his own life, and assuming Deculin does remember and chooses to dismiss the verdict to protect himself, and even so, if he doesn't even remember her father, wouldn't that be even more painful? The protagonist says she doesn't need to ask, and not to waste her potential on things from the past. He walks away. Luna silently thinks she knew it. Deculin knows her and her father. If he didn't, he'd have no reason to help her. Deculin must have felt some sense of responsibility and decided to help. And she wonders if the reason he helped her before was out of pity. And that's a relief. So he didn't forget. And if he still remembers her, that's enough. At least for now, that's enough. The system notifies that the villain's fate overcame the ending variable. Shop coins earned. Elsewhere, a car is moving and a voice inside asks if that really happened. It's Giltheon von Ludwin Illada, head of the Illada family, third-rank spiritualist, who also says Sylvia doesn't need to worry about that girl anymore. Ephraim is very talented, no doubt, but she lost her opportunity. 10 years ago, on the day of the aptitude test for entering the academy, Luna met her for the first time. The mage says it's impossible that both had the talent to become archmages, and asks what the hell, if there were two of them on the field, what the hell was happening? The peak of the magic world, Eternals, beings at a level not even the Emperor can touch. Those who reach this level are called archmages, and have their names recorded in the continent's history. However, according to tradition, only 3 people can become archmages in an era. No matter the type or specialization, this is an unchanging rule for mages. At that time, aside from Demerkin's seat, 2 were empty. However, one of them was practically designated for Adeline, the president of the Magic Tower. In other words, herself, heir of the Alade family, and Ephraim, whose family was a collateral branch of theirs, should compete for the remaining seat. And she understood that even if her father didn't say it directly. That day, Sylvia was aware of the real reason the Alades humiliated the Luna family. It was all because of her. They did it so she would become the Archmage instead of Ephraim, and becoming one is also her desire and destiny. She remembers Luna asking if she was afraid she'd catch up. She thinks no, she just had bad luck. Giltheon says that while she doesn't need to worry about that girl, she needs to be careful with Deculain. He's not just anyone. He may seem ordinary now, but he was once called a genius when he was young. From what they know, he could rise high before anyone expects it. Josephine thinks she knew that Professor Deculain had noticed her trap at that moment. She definitely erased Ephraim's mana. She set a trap so that when it came into contact with Ephraim's mana, it would trigger an explosion. It would have been a huge accident, and Ephraim would have been in even more trouble. But Deculain noticed her plan immediately, even after checking if there was any trace of observation magic in the room. Still, he offered them a deal. Instead of blaming her, it was a threat she had no choice but to accept. She thought he was just an arrogant man with slightly above-average talent, and now she wonders what kind of man he really is. A few days later at Deculain's mansion, a voice says it's Roy and asks if he's ready. The protagonist replies that he'll be down in a few seconds. Then the car moves. Kim is inside and thinks he made the right choice helping Ephraim. Thanks to that, he removed an elimination variable and earned shop coins. He didn't expect the student who asked the question to be Luna, but she was very hostile to Deculain at that time. Of course, Sylvia might hold a grudge against him for what happened, but he had no choice but to put out the fire at his feet. Leaving that aside, when it comes to social events, he'd rather avoid them. However, he can't pass up an opportunity to earn more shop coins. The system notifies a secondary mission to participate in the New Year Flower event and rewards shop coins. Wu thinks he needs at least 5 coins to access the shop, so he should check which named characters will be at the event. Then the car stops. Jin enters the venue and the servants welcome him. Everyone is there chatting. The protagonist observes them and thinks they all look like high-ranking nobles, and he's seeing a bunch of familiar named characters, especially Ehelm, whom he modeled himself. He made the right choice coming here. One man says, "Look who it is, Professor Deculain. His son is taking classes, and his name is..." People turn to him and say they've always wanted to meet him. Then they get entertained by Miss Ganesha, saying they read about her achievements in the Continental Journal. The man calls Deculain to join them for dinner and says his family is right there. Kim thinks he just heard someone say Ganesha a moment ago. Meeting her, someone who will leave a major mark in history even among adventurers, is the best thing he could do today. He wonders where she is since he heard her name somewhere nearby. Wu looks around until he spots the adventurer Ganesha, the 5th most powerful character at the start of the story. Jin walks, thinking he needs to hurry and talk to her, until someone approaches, saying so it really is who they think it is, Professor Deculain. The protagonist wonders why now. This is Ehelm von Garion Rewind, Imperial Exclusive Monarch Rank Mage, the 4th highest rank, who says it's impressive. Chief Professor Deculain remembers him, and it's an honor. It's been a while, and he asks how the research is going, saying it's early, but he heard some rumors. Kim asks what he's talking about. Ehelm says it's nothing big, just that the research made progress in 3 years. There are those who doubt his abilities. Wu thinks he's just provoking him. This guy was Deculain's partner at university. They were close, but after losing the chief professor position to Deculain, he started showing open envy and resentment. Maybe the original Deculain would have gotten angry, but to Wu, these provocations are meaningless. It's not like what he's saying is wrong, since the rumors Ehelm refers to are true. Jin looks to the side and realizes she's gone. Ganesha just vanished. Jarian says that if he acts so arrogant and ignorant, no one will want to be like him. The protagonist thinks, imagine missing her, just because he got stuck talking to a bastard like this. Kim calls out and tells him to cut the crap and get out of his way, then insults him, calling him a moldy, cheese-stinking bastard. Ehelm gets irritated and starts muttering to himself, as Wu walks away thinking he needs to find Ganesha quickly before she leaves the social event and gets familiar with others. His plan will be ruined. People ask where he's going. Jin sighs and says even if he gets rid of Ehelm, these bastards keep chasing him. That's why he hates social gatherings. until someone calls him. The protagonist notices it's who he was looking for, Ganesha, who asks if they ran into each other or if he was looking for her. Kim thinks that by trying to escape those bastards, he went straight to her. But more importantly, he wonders when she and Dekulin became acquainted. He says he just lost. The adventurer says she knew he was following her since it looked like he had something to say. She apologizes for that mission back then, but she returned the advance and cancellation fee and asks if he can let it go just this once. Wu thinks it seems they had a relationship based on commissions. Ganesha asks him to forgive her for not being able to bring those talented kids in magic as he requested. And it's not that she didn't bring them, she got attached, so she couldn't hand them over. Jin was wondering what she was talking about, but it seems Dekulin was going to repeat something he's done for a long time, trying to compensate for his own shortcomings by using a talented child. The adventurer says she wants to ask him something. Until when is he going to keep living like that? The protagonist wonders, until when? He thinks that before possessing Dekulin's body, he accepted sweet words from those who never helped, destroyed the trust of those around him, and hurt many for the sake of his own reputation. He answers that from now on, he'll live differently. Ganesha says she wasn't expecting that answer and thought he'd try to eliminate her, since he accepted the secret mission and then ran away. Kim says that's an exaggeration, and he wonders if he really tried to eliminate her, someone who was already a high-class fighter at this point, because that would mean he was truly ready to lose his life. The protagonist thinks he doesn't know much about the original Dekulin, but Ganesha is capable of eliminating someone with just a flick of her hair. Her traits are an invincible body and mastery over all martial arts. She is a fighter and adventurer who has reached the peak of physical strength, and since he himself possessed Dekulin, he probably can't send an eliminator after her. If he had, she would likely already be gone. That's a bit different from what he thought, but he's already achieved his goal at this social gathering, making connections. He has no further reason to stay, so he says he's leaving and tells her not to worry unnecessarily. The adventurer asks if he's really going already, and if everything's truly okay, and if there won't be any eliminator or elimination. Kim replies that doing that would be classless. Ganesha just watches him silently. Wu walks off thinking that with the Yukline family's power, as she said, he could use the Adventurers Guild to pressure Ganesha, but doing so could lead to unforeseen variables related to his elimination. The system notifies him of the villain's fate, elimination variable avoided, and he earns shop coins. Jin is surprised. He thinks that before, these things used to be overcome and now they're being avoided, and he didn't even realize it, but that earlier conversation was also an elimination variable. He still can't feel comfortable anywhere there. Somewhere else, Rayleigh asks how long she plans to stay there. Julie replies she didn't even want to come in the first place. Rayleigh tells her to stop and lets go. Dea repeats she doesn't want to. Rayleigh stares at her and asks how things are going with that person from before. She means Professor Dekulin. She was worried because of the rumors. Julie remembers him and replies that of course things aren't going well, and if she says that too loudly, someone might hear. That's when she notices something next to her. It's Dekulin. The protagonist descends the stairs and walks outside. People ask if he's already leaving, the man who loves social events, and say he's leaving without even looking at his fiancée. Maybe it's because he doesn't have a good relationship with her. If that's the case, then the rumors must be true. Because Dekulin left the social event earlier than usual that day, rumors spread that he did so because of a disagreement with his fiancée. But there's no way Kim could have known that. The system announces a completed side mission. Attend the social event, New Year's flowers, shop coin plus 0.5 comma. Current shop coins, 4.5. A week has passed since Wu attended the New Year's flower event. During that time, in addition to his daily memorization and basic telekinesis training, he felt his stamina was lacking, so he began working out. The reason? He almost died after doing something reckless. A few days ago, Jin was coughing up plasma and said that if he were a mage, he would have died, asking if Wu survived thanks to his Iron Man trait. However, after meeting Ganesha the other day, Wu wished for more strength, so he engraved fire control in addition to his existing telekinesis, all to strengthen his metal manipulation. The purpose of this was to transfer the essence of a spell into his telekinesis, allowing it to grow stronger faster by reducing the time needed to learn magic. On the other hand, it's extremely dangerous. After realizing the unnecessary stress it put on his body, he decided he needed to train physically. In the present, the protagonist thinks that, as a result, he has reinstated a morning routine, until he realizes it's time to go to work. In Professor Dekulin's office, someone hands him a document saying a declaration has arrived from the Magic Tower. The sender is the Professor Qualification Committee of the Magic Tower, informing him about an audit hearing scheduled for 6 months from now, regarding progress on the current research he's conducting. Until then, they'd like him to prepare the relevant documents. Kim walks and thinks that if an audit is being held, it probably means Deculane's research had been stalled long before he took over his body. That's a disadvantageous situation for him. Deculane in the game was always a professor. It's possible one of the mission prerequisites is to be a professor, so losing that title would be like losing all hope of returning. Wu stops and thinks that in that case, he needs to find something, anything, in Deculane's lab. He opens the door and it's a complete mess. Jin thinks it looks like no one has been there for quite some time. If Deculane had been coming and going, there's no way it would be this messy. Then the protagonist notices something. He sees that a particular pile of trash looks unusual and wonders if it's hiding something. He doesn't know whose fault it is, but there wouldn't be a better way to stop Deculane. Luckily, he learned telekinetic manipulation. Kim tries to move the goo and grabs a book. He opens it and says, it looks like Deculane encrypted all the research results so they wouldn't be stolen, but it's useless. Until a light is emitted and a powerful energy is released. Wu thinks that this golden light is far too powerful. It seems the research itself was simply amazing, if what he's seeing through the combination of sweet sight and wealth magnate shines this brightly. However, the research is incomplete. It's torn with blank sections, and even the logic on this part is totally wrong. Still, the research is impressive enough to make the wealth magnate react. He wonders if the name of that child was Elfarine Luna, because now he understands. It seems that while Elfarine's father was working as a researcher for Deculane, he made a desperate attempt to hide it. The hatred the Luna family's mages hold toward Deculane is clearly because of that. Elfarine had a brutal life. Jin crumples the paper and says, not to worry, he'll complete the research through comprehension. And if he manages to fill in the blank spaces that way, he intends to add a name to that paper. And of course, as the author, he also needs achievements, so he can't put just his own name. At the university campus cafe, Light and Coffee, a voice asks if she gets it, saying that as commoners, they have to stick together. The redhead says there are only 30 commoners in their class. If they don't work together, they'll end up suffering one day. She asks if Elfarine agrees. Luna stays silent, thinking she herself is a noble. But it's fine. She wonders how she's supposed to fulfill the role of a noble when she doesn't even have a residence or land. What kind of noble is she, really? The redhead says she definitely has to come. Another girl says she's the representative of the commoners and was also a victim of Sylvia. Elfarine wonders if these people think of themselves as some kind of leaders of the common folk. The boy says it's true, but to create a club they need permission from a supervising professor, and he thinks the professors won't like gatherings like the one they're having now. The redhead says that's the problem. Someone asks about Professor Relan. The girl replies he's known for sucking up to that fat noble. They mention Professor Carmel but decide against it. He'd rather be eliminated by suffocation than breathe the same air as commoners. The boy says obviously Professor Deculane wouldn't give them permission either. Meanwhile, Luna is distracted, wondering if they're really going to eat that. She hopes not. The redhead stands and says right, they'll try asking Professor Deculane. She asks if Luna would talk to him on their behalf. The boy says that now that he thinks about it, Deculane is actually pretty fair. He looks down on everyone equally, noble or not. The redhead says she avoided expulsion thanks to him and asks if that means she caught his attention. Elfarine says it's not like that at all and asks if they really think he's a good person. She wonders why the vibe is turning so weird and thinks she doesn't want to get involved with Deculane. Luna runs off saying she can't do it. The redhead says never say never and to just think about it. Elfarine says she's completely wrong and doing that will just have the opposite effect. Julia grabs her arm and Luna asks what's the problem. She nearly bumps into someone, and a voice tells her to move. When Elfarine looks up, she sees it's Deculane. The redhead wishes her luck. Luna wonders when she even got there and calls her a coward. The protagonist walks off. Luna calls out to him and shows him a paper, saying she wants to form a club and needs a signature, thinking whatever. She continues, saying she won't bother him anymore and was just concerned since he seems not to approve of clubs with commoners. She thinks she doesn't want to get involved with this guy, but the redhead was right. She remembers them saying that professors definitely wouldn't cooperate with them, so it's better to get this over with herself than be pestered about it. Elfarine decides she'll just try. Kim takes the paper and signs it, telling her to send the details to his office later. He hands the sheet back, and Luna takes it, saying it's fine. She wonders if he really signed it, if Deculane actually agreed to this. The redhead walks up and asks if she really got his signature, saying she didn't expect that. Meanwhile, Elfarine is distracted, wondering why. She thinks it was the same with the disciplinary committee. Why is he being so kind to her? In the classroom, the professor says that today's lesson is about understanding pure elements. As they know, elements are the foundation of all magic. However, many mages still don't understand the differences between magical categories and pure elements. Luna watches him and wonders, is this guilt? Or maybe sympathy? She thinks that even though he's being kind to her now, he's the one who led her father to ruin. It feels completely fake. And if he really thinks he did something wrong, then he should show his true face to the world and reflect on it, until a voice asks if she's okay. It's Julia, who also says she doesn't look well and tells her not to worry about those guys. They're all talk and nothing more. Ephraim wonders what the hell she's even talking about. The nobles start asking what that worm is doing there, why she's looking in that direction, and say it's disgusting. Luna thinks she really became the common enemy of the nobles after those incidents. She tells her partner that it's fine, that they're always like that, and they should just focus on class. Jin is still talking about the magical circles they've used so far, saying that each movement also has a meaning, and someone thinks they've heard Deculane's classes are different. The protagonist releases magic in his hand and says this ignition spell can change color by adding 2 movements to the circle. That's because those 2 movements decide the flame's color. He summons a book and says that's what they'll learn today, fluid fire. Ephraim's thoughts weren't wrong. Originally, Deculane's classes were just a way for him to show off his professor status. Now, Kim's classes were beautiful recreations using mana. Creative explanations from elite understanding, it shocked the debutantes in the room, as well as Sylvia, who had lost the joy of learning due to her genius talents. Wu says that, as they all know, this magical circle is for summoning water, but if they combine it with the fire circle, it becomes this. He releases the magic to show. People look surprised when they see the flame, commenting that it really is flowing, the fire is flowing like water. Josephine thinks it's hopeless. She didn't know his classes were so theoretical. Most genius mages use intuition to cast spells, so theory becomes something disposable. If all mages prioritize theory, they'd all be on the same page. That makes sense. If you focus too much on theory, there's little time left to learn magic. Trying to understand all magic through theory is inefficient and gets in the way of training. That's the paradox of magic. To become elite, you need good intuition, but elites can't explain intuition. Sylvia keeps thinking that for someone whose genius is currently being questioned by the public, teaching such a theory-heavy class is practically impossible. Somewhere else, a voice says this was completely different from the rumors. In the Magic Tower dormitory, Luna says she's never paid so much attention in class before. She looks to the side at her door, which is covered in nasty messages about commoners, and wonders how long these stupid pranks will continue. She says it's been getting worse ever since that incident with Sylvia. Then, Ephraim notices a letter under the door and asks if it's a sponsorship certificate, saying she almost fell for it. No way that's real. She wonders who would sponsor her when she's hated by both the Elad and Deculane families. She says actually this is good. She can report it as fake and get a reward. At the Magical Administration office, she leaves and realizes it's real. Remembering when she took it there and the secretary told her it wasn't fake, that the seal was genuine. Luna couldn't believe it at the time. Now she's super excited, pinching herself over and over, saying, this will definitely wake her up. Ephraim looks around, wondering if anyone saw her. Somewhere else, Luna thinks if people find out she has 100,000 Elne, it's best to prepare an emergency bag just in case something happens. And she shouldn't have gone to the Magic Administration office. She says the staff lady gave her a weird look. Maybe she's after her money too. She should have been more careful, then she accidentally bumps her head and says it hurts, and she still hasn't woken up. Ephraim's eyes fill with tears. She's moved that someone recognized her talents. She says there's still kindness in the world and that she'll get herself together and try a bit harder. At the Eucline family mansion, a voice asks if it's really true. The servant replies yes, that just now he went to the Schanzenjewel auction. He should have arrived by now. Yariel says he spent 10 million Elni last year and asks what kind of disaster he plans to cause this year. If he causes more trouble, she won't forgive him. A car stops in the city of Luton at the auction. The protagonist walks inside thinking he'll finally be able to buy something he's been looking for. During the first time he used telekinesis as his main magic, he realized he needed metal to compensate for his lack of talent. The precious item he has now is made of wood steel, but it's just a temporary solution. In the VIP waiting room, Kim enters and thinks that what he really needs will be available at today's auction. Then he notices someone ahead. It's his fiancée. He thinks he didn't expect this. Julie stands up and walks to him, saying she hopes he's been well. Wu thinks that just imagining he'd run into her here. Dea says she heard he sent 2 young mages to the disciplinary committee this time. Jin says that news is already old and asks what the problem is, and if she's going to try to blame him for that too. Julie replies that they're novices, and asks if he intends to crush the dreams of newcomers, saying his sins will come back to haunt him someday, and that he must not repeat the same mistakes he made in the past. That is the last piece of advice she'll offer. The protagonist thinks those were the final words she gave him. She intends to end the relationship she had with Deculane, and that's good, because he prefers it that way too, no matter how beautiful she is, and he doesn't want to get married. Something he didn't even do in the real world for such a petty reason. And around her, there are many elimination variables, including herself. If she makes a mistake, she could even lose her life on the wedding day. Julie turns her back and walks away. Kim thinks the Dea he knows isn't the type to attend auctions and wonders why she's there. He asks if she came to the auction house just to say that. Julie immediately turns around, irritated, shouting that he's arrogant. And of course she didn't come looking for him. She came because she needs something, and she's serious. She's really looking for something. Woo says he gets it and tells her to calm down. One explanation would have been enough. He thinks she's so cute. It's the first time he's seen her like that. Then he feels something strange and wonders what these emotions are that he's feeling, since he just thought about how dangerous it is to get close to her. He wonders if he's being influenced by Deculane's emotions and thinks he's been careful not to have his personality corrupted. A voice announces to all visitors of the auction that it will begin shortly. Jin thinks no. It's not like his heart races when he sees her. He's overthinking. He sits down. The host says they're presenting the first item, an Eastern vase, and to admire its elegant curves crafted by an artisan from the Far East. The vase emits a powerful light, and the protagonist notices it's the same light he saw when looking at Ephorine's documents. It's wealth. Moreover, the light is growing stronger, and if that's the case, the host starts announcing bids. Kim releases his magic toward the vase and notices that even with the rising price, the vase hasn't lost its glow. That means it's worth far more, and he has enough in the bank, so maybe it's not such a bad investment. His current balance is 205,238,039 eln. The host continues selling items. The ring of Reborn was sold to guest, 777 for 3 million elne. Lucho's scissors went for 2.1 million elna to guest 777. The ancient rune necklace was sold for 4.3 million elni to guest 777. And again, guest 777 takes the item for 5.5 million. People are impressed and say that number 777 is buying everything and ask if it's Professor Deculane. Julie sighs and thinks he's pathetic, desperate for attention even in a place like this. They're just too different, and she can't believe he spent so much money for a moment of vanity. She doesn't understand why he doesn't appreciate the beauty of humanity and modesty. They'll just leave him alone. All she needs is the winter flame. The host says that now comes the final item of the auction. Many seek it, but it's nearly impossible to find. It's a mineral used to forge countless magnificent swords throughout the Empire's history. Nature's magic, the winter flame, the famous snowflame stone. They all immediately show interest. The snowflame stone is one of the 10 rarest minerals in the world, usually used to forge swords or other weapons. As the name implies, it's a rare and paradoxical item that contains both fire and ice energy. The only superior materials for forging swords are legendary items made with dragon bones. So the snowflame stone is effectively the best ingredient he can get. He'll make sure to obtain it. The host starts the bidding, number 1089, 30 million elni, and asks if there's anyone else. Then the item goes to Dea. Thinks it's great that she got it, until the host says number 777 offers 31 million. Julie thinks she's heard that number so much today she can't ignore what he's doing and wonders why he's doing this. Deculane. Number 1089 offers 32 million and 777 offers 33 million. An old man says he's trying to buy the snowflame stone used to forge swords. It must be a gift for his fiancée. But if it were just a gift, he could have let her buy it. He must really love her. Until the protagonist realizes he's been competing with his ex-fiancée and thinks the snowstone is something she would also be interested in. And if he takes it, she might actually hold a grudge against him. But he also needs it. It's the first time it's been sold in 3 years, and she wonders when another might be found. But she also thinks it could be dangerous. Yet for the sake of her precious item, she has to get the snowflame stone. Until a voice offers 42 million, and the host announces that the owner of the magical metal is guest number 777. People comment that this was very entertaining. Professor Deculane got it. This auction must have been the most competitive ever. Freyden went a bit overboard, and someone says the professor is working hard to give his fiancée a gift, and he already saw what he wanted too. Julie, very angry, grits her teeth and thinks that once again everything is repeating just like last year. She never wanted this to happen. Their engagement day was the worst day of her life. Deculane had said that this should provoke her to marry him, and that's how good he was. And in front of all the wealth he showed her, she only felt humiliation, and she thought he knew what she truly wanted from him. So she left the room, ruined her own wedding. But that wasn't the end. People around started commenting about her, saying she was so dignified. But in the end, she gave in to Deculane. She heard that she was promised the position of captain in the Ukline Knight Order in exchange. They say she begged for it. Obviously, he was the one who spread those rumors, tarnishing Dea's image. She thought that he believes she'll come back to him if something like that happens and that he's an idiot. Someone who can't love no matter how much he tries. In the present, Julie thinks that even now until she notices he's approaching her. The protagonist asks if she also wanted the Snowflame Stone. Dea wonders how long he intends to insult her. Kim apologizes. Julie is surprised to hear that. Woo turns and says if she'll excuse him. Dea keeps watching him, still surprised, wondering what he's apologizing for, if it's for getting the Snowflame Stone, because the Deculane she knows wouldn't apologize. Then Julie looks to the side and realizes it's Josephine, the eldest daughter of the Freyden family. Somewhere else, a car approaches. Jin is inside the car thinking that he assumed Julie wanted the Snowflame Stone to keep for herself, and that she's probably mad that he bought it instead of her, and he was surprised that she didn't attack him. He wonders how much of a piece of trash Deculane was for her to want to eliminate him. The protagonist enters his house and the servants welcome him back. Kim looks to the side and asks if something happened. They reply that the young lady is at the house. Woo walks to her. Yariel says that was supposedly to pay for the mines and asks if this is what he does with the money. Jin thinks it's no surprise she had that much money in her personal account and hadn't paid much attention to it and says not to worry because he bought something that will bring them benefits. Graham, very angry, says he's treating her like a trash can. The protagonist thinks this isn't good. Tears stream down her face and Yariel asks if he thinks her destiny is to clean up his mess every time he does something and says their finances are not doing well and the workers and herself are working hard not to drown in debt and asks if he just went and spent all that money and what kind of piece of shit he has to be to gamble with money that belongs to the territory. She releases a terrifying and powerful mana. Kim thinks the villain's fate is being activated, but that golden light behind the red aura, that's the wealth magnate being activated too. The meaning is simple. If he doesn't get through this situation, he'll die. But if he succeeds, it will bring him a lot of money. And he knows the answer to this problem, so he says not to worry. Graham tells him to shut up and asks if it looks like she's worried now, because she has to work her ass off to fix what he did, and asks if he thinks she wanted to do that, and if he even knows she gave up on university and missed a date because of him. Woo says she doesn't need to do that. Yariel asks what he's talking about and says he's done nothing but spend money since their parents died, and now he spent 150 million eln in a single day. Jin says he'll give up the position of family head. Graham asks what he just said. The protagonist replies that he said he'll give her the position of family head. Yariel is extremely surprised and can't believe it, telling him to stop talking nonsense and not lie to her. Kim says that's no way for a noble to speak and he's not lying, and that he can swear if she wants. Graham asks about swearing and if he means a mage's oath, the kind that can eliminate someone if they break it, and if he's serious. Woo says yes. Yariel says it makes no sense and asks why he'd do that out of nowhere, and if he hit his head somewhere. Jin replies that she doesn't have to believe him if she doesn't want to. Graham says she'll eliminate him if he goes back on his word. The protagonist asks if she's planning to leave now. Yariel replies, of course. Since someone spent all the money at the auction, she has to do something about it. She slams the door and leaves. The system shows the villain's fate. A deadly variable was overcome and shop coins were earned. Kim thinks it seems the storm has passed, at least nothing bad happened, and there's no problem giving her the position. If he keeps changing things one by one like this, he'll be able to escape. Ganesha appears and says he really was serious when he said he would change. Woo watches her and says she's an unwanted guest. The adventurer apologizes and says she was just passing by, and what she saw was very shocking. Jin asks if there's any reason to be shocked and says she would do a better job than him being the family head. Ganesha says still, Yariel Graham doesn't have a single drop of Eucline blood. The protagonist wonders what she's talking about, as he doesn't remember this being in the game, and thinks he already knew Yariel wasn't Deculane's biological sister. However, he wonders if she doesn't have even a single drop of Eucline plasma, because he'd never heard anything about that. Ganesha asks if he's okay with that and says that, to begin with, he was the one who requested this, to determine if he and his sister had any blood relation. Kim wonders if there was that kind of past he didn't know about. He says even so, Yariel is still Yariel. The adventurer is impressed and says he's surprising her a lot today. She didn't think he would say something like that. Woo thinks he could say the same. He didn't know this kind of past existed. Ganesha says alright, she'll make sure to protect his sister's secret, and there's one more thing before she leaves. She heard that the six-headed snake has started to move. The six-headed snake are the leaders of infamous criminal organizations across the continent. Each one of them has a bounty worth millions. The adventurer says they're after items bought at the auction house, and even if the auction house manages to deliver them safely, he'll have to stay alert the moment they arrive at the residence. And it seems he's been neglecting magical defenses quite a bit lately. She leaves behind a cloth with energy around it and walks away. Jin places his hand over his face and thinks this was something he didn't know. But knowing it doesn't change anything, from the beginning, he isn't Dekulin. His treatment toward Yariel wouldn't change whether she was his biological sister or not, because she will always be Dekulin's sister. So he'll just hide the truth. Somewhere else, a few people sit around a campfire and a voice says they're telling the truth. That Professor Dekulin has changed a lot. It's almost like someone else is in his skin. He's completely different now. It's the adventurer, who also says that even that trash seems different, now that he's saying nice things. The guy says it's because she has a thing for handsome men, so no matter what he says, she'll keep liking him. Ganesha says then maybe she'll smash them for being ugly. The guy says his grandma told him he's handsome. The adventurer says then maybe some good-looking guy was walking behind him at the time. Rayleigh asks if she's saying Dekulin has a human side now. Ganesha says they won't need to keep observing Dekulin anymore and wanted to ask him if he's still looking for a magic scribe, but that doesn't seem to be the case anymore. She calls them back and also says that everything they heard today is a secret. They better stay quiet about all of this. They're inside a magic circle. They teleport immediately. The next day, Imperial University. The protagonist is looking at the system shop, which shows the upgrade in mana quality. The character's innate mana quality will be improved, and both mana potency and efficiency will slightly increase. Kim says now he can finally use the system shop, but still doesn't have enough coins to buy what he needs. In the system shop, this system allows him to use shop coins to strengthen characters. And he can also improve named characters using the shop, not just himself. There are few opportunities to use the system shop. He'll only have 6 chances until the end of the second half. The reason is that he can only use the shop once per level, and each time the level increases, the amount he needs to spend doubles at the very least. Wu says he can't rush and waste this valuable opportunity. He's consistently training memorization, physical training, levitating blades controlled by chi, and more, integrating them into his routine, but he still lacks combat power compared to infamous named villains. For the sake of growth, what he needs now is the mana quality improvement, so he's going to try to collect the 4 shop coins he needs. Until he says for someone to come in, Alan enters and hands over some papers, saying to take a look. It just came in, and he thinks he'll need to be careful. This was published in today's issue of the Mage newspaper. Jin sees that Lockhart is wanted. There have been eyewitness reports of the Mage Eliminator, Lockhart, in the area, and people are being advised to avoid staying outdoors. The protagonist wonders about this Mage Eliminator and recalls that he's the greatest threat to mage players in the first quarter of the game, so this guy is appearing now. If he were just a normal mage, it would be a threat to him, but in his current state, there's no reason to worry. In fact, this might be an opportunity to earn shop coins, so he hopes to bump into him, saying there's no reason to be concerned about a Mage Eliminator. He says he's going to the library, so Alan should return as well. Alan says he understood. Then Kim pauses and realizes it's true, and asks if Alan has any interest in becoming an assistant professor. Alan says of course, then the boy widens his eyes and yells loudly, then asks if he's saying he'll recommend him as an assistant professor, even though he always told him he had no talent. Wu says he's asking now because he's seen how serious he is about all of this, and thinks that obviously it's because he got a system warning that he needed to choose an assistant professor. He says that's enough questions and tells him to take this, a bracelet with the Euclid emblem, and to keep working hard. Alan gets very excited and thanks him. Jin thinks Alan's ability to organize documents and handle various tasks is excellent, and he'll be very useful, so he can't let him go. Everyone who held resentment against Dekulin's cruelty eventually gave up and ran away, yet this boy is still doing all sorts of work on his own, and he wonders how long before he might run too. He tells him he can leave early today and buy something to eat with that. When Alan tries to say something, the protagonist just turns his back and walks away. The boy watches him. In the staff-only library, Kim enters and thinks that the reason he came to the library was because of what the Lunas wrote. What he found in the lab was about the invention of pure elements, but it had many mistakes and gaps, so he has to make up for it. It would be great if he could find a useful grimoire on manipulation too. He looks to the side and asks why she's in the staff-only library, and it's Sylvia. She gets startled when she sees him. 10 minutes earlier, the secretary was speaking telepathically with the professor, saying the young lady claimed she was looking for study materials, even though it was an executive-only room. Retland said it didn't matter and that they didn't need to restrict the successor of the Alada family and this year's top rookie mage, and to let her use it freely since it was for her studies. The secretary told her he said it was fine, and to feel free to walk around. Sylvia's hobby is studying literature and languages. She came to the executive reading room to find material that met both criteria simultaneously. The novel she found was written in none other than ethanol. With the disappearance of the fairies, its value has risen, making ethanol novels even rarer. That was the reason she visited the executive reading room, which she normally wouldn't have access to. And of course, she didn't expect to find Deculine in that place. That's when Wu asked why she was in the executive reading room and if she wanted to summon the disciplinary committee again. Sylvia is startled and wonders what he's doing there. She's sure she heard he never even comes near the library. She says she's there looking for a certain document and already got the professor's permission. Jin says that means the professor ignored the school regulations and the librarian is complicit in that. In that case, they also need to be disciplined. He looks at the book in her hand and takes it, saying this is an ethanol novel, and the purpose of breaking the regulations was to find a romance novel written in ethanol. The blonde asks how he can read in ethanol and says to wait. That's not the important part, it's because she's interested in language-based literature. The protagonist gives the book back to her and says he'll let it slide this time. However, if she comes there again without proper permission, he'll take disciplinary action. So unless the goal is to flaunt her family's influence, she should ask someone to borrow the book for her. He walks away. Sylvia lowers her head and thinks that he humiliated her. She just wanted to understand fairies through novels written in ethanol and wonders how Deculine was able to read ethanol, since it's inconsistent and difficult to understand. Meanwhile, the apprentices are training their magic. Relin says it's their first practical training session, but everyone is doing well, and he thinks they're not afraid of the Dark Mountain. Retlin says training will have to stop at night, but even so, he's proud of them. The Dark Mountain is located a bit away from the university grounds. It's a place of considerable significance and designated security for the Magic Tower. The forest serves as a training area for real-life experiences, as well as a rich repository of magical materials. Because of this, the danger posed by animals and poisonous creatures is high, leading the Magic Tower to impose multiple protective barriers and assign a professor on duty for patrol. Retlin calls for Deculine and says the professor in charge of duty this week hasn't been chosen yet. They need to pick someone new, and asks who he thinks would be appropriate. Kim replies that he himself will take the duty. Retlin is surprised and says it's as expected from the head professor. Seeing him take the lead as an example really makes him the epitome of what a professor should be. Wu thinks it's not for any noble reason like that. The system notifies the side quest, the darkness of the Magic Tower, shop coins, and reward for additional achievements. Jin thinks something is drawing him there, and that must be why he received this side quest. He wonders what's about to happen on that mountain that turns this game into a horror genre at night. The professor says for everyone to start organizing and the students say goodbye. 9 hours later, in a cafe near the Magic Tower, there's food on the table and a voice says, "They're so beautiful, too pretty to eat, and they look delicious." They ask if she's really going to buy all of them. Ephraim replies, of course, and says they can dig in, thinking she now has 100,000 eln, and says it's on her. Julia says she already sent in the club constitution plan, it should be approved soon, and to consider this the first unofficial meeting. The boy says he just hopes others won't hesitate too much. There aren't many people signing up, but not to worry. So long as the club management is solid, people will join eventually. The redhead says speaking of which, she heard there was a training session on the Dark Mountain earlier today. Luna says yes, and that 50 people volunteered, even though accidents occasionally happen there. Then an extremely loud noise is heard. They rush outside to see what it is. They run toward the noise and a voice cries for help. Ephraim immediately runs ahead. Julia tells her to wait, something feels wrong, but Luna keeps running, until she suddenly stops and asks what she just said. Ephraim appears in another place, similar to a shadowy forest, and she's confused, asking where this place is, saying she was just on the cafe street. A voice calls for help and Luna thinks it's true. Someone was asking for help and asks where the person is. The voice replies it's over there. Ephraim comes across someone and asks if they're all right. Then plasma bursts out and the person starts screaming loudly. Luna watches in shock and thinks someone is attacking. Then her eyes widen as she sees someone approaching, and it's Deculine. Ephraim asks if he just attacked that woman and how he could attack a civilian. The protagonist tells her to open her eyes and look again. That's not a person. Luna looks again and realizes it's a terrifying creature and asks what it is. Kim replies that it seems she was under the effect of an illusion, something demons do. Ephraim begins being pulled back and Wu tells her not to interfere and to get out of there. Luna asks what that is and Jin says it's time to hunt. He thinks the monster is furious because it just lost its prey. Then the protagonist moves, dodging the attacks. The creature charges at him and tries to attack again. The two face each other and Kim thinks the core on its forehead must be what causes illusions. Thanks to his mental resistance, it's useless against him. His plasma is boiling. The Deculine bloodline is making him even more furious. The system notifies about the Euclid attribute rank, bloodline, contents. It's a lineage with exceptional power to subjugate demons. When facing demons, or in areas with high concentrations of demonic energy, he can purify the surrounding mana using his own. It's purified mana that increases in quality by 1 rank. However, he will become more aggressive. Hostility against demons, the renowned legacy of the Yukulins, known for hunting demons since ancient times, now manifesting in Dekulin as well. He will never let the demon before him survive. Wu stares with a terrifying gaze as the beast charges. Jin, without hesitation, attacks. And the system notifies the side quest, the darkness of the magic tower, shop coins, additional achievement, defeat the first demon, shop coins, family lineage, Yukulin, unlock attribute. The monster is defeated and the protagonist calls the creature filthy, saying that even in its moment of elimination, it reeks of filth. He thinks the demon's appearance signals the true beginning of things. It's the sign that marks the start of the game without the player. Somewhere else, Luna opens her eyes and sits up in bed, startled. The nurse notices she's awake. Ephraim asks what happened and says she was in the forest. The nurse says she probably doesn't remember. Last night, a demon appeared on the Mountain of Darkness and she was under its spell and fainted. Later, she was found and brought to the clinic. The Mountain of Darkness was closed off because of that demon, and the magic tower is investigating everything. By the way, it was Professor Dekulin who saved her. Luna thinks, not him again. She asks what day it is. The nurse replies that it's been 36 hours since she arrived. Ephraim says that means it's Wednesday, and to wait if it's Wednesday. She screams that she's late. Somewhere else, people widen their eyes. Luna is panting and says she barely made it. Julia calls her and asks if she's okay, saying she went to see her at the clinic, but she wasn't awake. Ephraim replies that she's fine, actually in the best shape possible since she slept a lot. She asks what's going on and if she missed some kind of announcement about today's class. The redhead says she doesn't know. When she arrived, it was already like this. Must be a special class today. The protagonist approaches, along with his assistant. Luna wonders who that is. Kim says he has an announcement to make before class begins. This is Alan, and he will be his assistant. People comment that they thought he preferred teaching alone and heard that he never had an assistant before. Becoming a teaching assistant allows one to build a resume through professor evaluations. There's no way Professor Dekulin would just allow that. Ephraim thinks that makes sense. That was also the reason her father remained a researcher for 30 years. He never managed to become an assistant. She wonders why Dekulin suddenly accepted a mage he'd never even seen before as his assistant. Wu says today's class will be experiential learning, and they must solve the assigned task within 3 hours. Alan begins handing out timers. Luna thinks her father's legacy is that bracelet, and every time she looked at it, she wondered, for Dekulin, who was her father, why didn't he give him a chance? And why is he doing good things now? But she thinks no, she needs to focus, finish the assignment, come up with a spell fast. But her head is full of all sorts of thoughts, until a voice says 22 minutes and 15 seconds. Done. And it's Sylvia. People are impressed and say not even 30 minutes passed. Jin observes her and says it's perfect, she may leave. The blonde stands up, looks to the side and sees that Ephraim is struggling. She smiles and Luna grits her teeth, thinking she has to finish too. Later, Julia and Laheen also finish. The students start standing up and leaving as they complete the task. They comment that the 3 hours have already passed. Ephraim is left alone in the room, thinking she's screwed, trying to think of something. Not only was she worse than that idiot Sylvia, she was the only one who failed by the end of class. She wonders why she's like this. If she really is an idiot who can't even do something simple like this. She thinks she just didn't know. And revenge. Nothing like that, and she didn't even go to the academy. There's no way to compete. A voice says it's been 5 hours and 47 minutes. It's the protagonist asking how long she's going to make him wait. Luna is startled to see that it's Dekulin and wonders if he's still there. Kim says she had a breakdown over an easy assignment and couldn't make it in time. Ephraim apologizes. Wu says that even if someone laughs at her, even if someone is ahead of her, even if the person she hates most is in front of her, she must always maintain a cold and logical mindset because she will never reach his level with such a weak mind. He says he's disappointed. He thought she was more than this. He leaves the room. Luna lowers her head, looks at the clock and sits down, remembering him saying he thought she was more than this. Ephraim clenches her fist and asks what's the problem. She begins releasing magic and says she can do this, even if someone like him is disappointed in her. Plasma drips from her nose, and as she continues releasing her energy, she says she'll do it no matter what it takes. Jin thinks this much isn't a problem. He spent 6 hours on Ephraim, but it was a necessary cost. The reason he needs her to grow is for what's coming. Because of the demon that appeared on the Mountain of Darkness, he realized the main quest is about to begin. As soon as the era of overwhelming evil begins, named characters with a good alignment will appear in the main quest, and among them, the strongest will be Ephraim. At the moment, she doesn't have the mental fortitude or the sensitivity of a mage, but once she overcomes that, her growth will be overwhelming. Of course, that growth could be dangerous for himself, but he won't let that happen. Destiny is nothing more than a religion for those who don't make an effort. He believes only in himself. Dekulin's personality would hardly allow a debutante to become as strong as he is. Luna opens the classroom door and walks out. The protagonist watches her from a distance and enters the room, coming across her completed assignment. He smiles, saying 6 hours, 25 minutes. Task complete. He writes that she perfectly demonstrates the innate flaws of a graduate who didn't attend the academy. However, the quality of these results is worthy of competing for first place. The system notifies that the side quest is complete. Kim thinks now that she's back, he'll return to his residence. Someone calls out to him and says, "It's been a while." Wu realizes it's Zeit and wonders what he's doing there. Zeit von Bruggen-Freiden is the current head of the Freiden family, Julie's older brother, and the one who most insisted on the engagement between Dekulin and Julie. More importantly, he ranks above Ganesha in initial combat power in 3rd place. He's a named character famous for his tremendous combat strength. Jin wonders why someone like him would be looking for him. Could it be because of Julie's Snowflame Stone? If so, this could be one of those elimination variable scenarios, and he thinks he has no countermeasure against this monster right now. Zeit says it's a pleasure to see him there, and that he heard recently that he and his sister haven't been seeing each other much, so he got worried. The protagonist asks if that's really the case. Bruggen says he's planning to schedule a dinner this week and asks if that's okay with him. Kim thinks luckily he still seems friendly, at least for now, and says he doesn't mind. Zeit puts a hand on his shoulder and says that was a quick decision, and he likes that. He prepared the menu to suit his taste, so he'll be waiting for him there, and since he organized everything himself, he'll take full responsibility. So they'll meet there. Bruggen walks away, and Wu thinks he didn't even give him the chance to refuse, and no, he actually made it so he couldn't refuse. Zeit places his house above all else, and who knows what would happen if anyone interfered with his plans. Doesn't look like he'll be able to cancel this meeting. The next day at the Freiden residence, a voice shouts that she doesn't want to, and another asks why she's so against it. It's Julie saying they hate each other. Besides, she's busy training the knights and doesn't have time to meet him. Bruggen asks if it's just because the Snowflame Stone was taken from her. Dea asks, taken how? And says seriously that it's not because of that. Someone watches them argue. Zeit asks why he would buy metal only useful for making a weapon if it weren't for her. Julie replies that if he gives her a sword as a gift, she'll immediately break off the engagement. Bruggen grits his teeth, releasing a dark energy, and tells her to think carefully. He reminds her that he told her the other day doing this would be foolish. Dea says she's sure she already told him that there's no room for emotions in politics. Zeit says that as far as he knows, there's no man who loves her, and asks if there's someone she's interested in. Julie replies that there's no one like that. Bruggen asks if she's worried about Dekulin's background, but Dea says it has nothing to do with it. Zeit asks why and tells her to make sure she arrives on time. If there's a problem, they'll deal with it there. He leaves. Julie clenches her fist, draws her sword, and makes some movements with it, causing a strong impact. Nearby, someone approaches from behind and says her sword is too agitated. Dea realizes it's Veron, her subordinate. Julie apologizes, saying she showed a disgraceful side of herself. Veron says not at all. He understands, and for starters, he doesn't believe that abominable man is worthy of her. The current family head is forcing her to marry him. Dea interrupts and says, "That's enough. It's not a knight's place to speak ill of his lord behind his back." She stares at him and tells him not to dirty his hands for her. She's fine. The subordinate looks at her and says he understands. Julie walks off, saying she's heading out and to get ready. Veron watches her walk away and thinks that he's finally found the answer to his anguish and suffering, a way to prove his loyalty as a vassal. It's something only he can do, and he will make her happy. In Bercht, during the Elders' Assembly, a voice says, a demon is said to have appeared in the Dark Mountains, and, to begin with, magical creation was used with mystical arts to defeat the demon. Since demons have appeared, they must take action and send letters to the 12 sorcerers to answer Bercht's call. Elsewhere, another voice says he's finally finished organizing the items he bought at the auction. He'll only equip the Riferen ring that helps recover mana and the ancient rune necklace that stores mana, and he'll lock the rest in a vault, as Ganesha suggested, so he doesn't need to worry about any thieves. It's the protagonist who also thinks there's still a problem. The most important item isn't what he thought. Even though he didn't expect to be able to use the Snowflame Stone immediately, he didn't expect it wouldn't move at all no matter what he did, not even telekinesis. He wonders if the Snowflame Stone is resisting his magic. It was very expensive in the game, so he could only admire it, which means he doesn't know how to use it. Even melting it should allow for telekinesis to work. Then Kim realizes something and remembers reading in the library that a famous sword must be tamed, a process known as communication. He wonders if it means understanding the sword itself. He places his hand on the stone, exerts force while channeling his energy into it. Wu removes his hand and the system notifies him. Comprehension 0.1%, Mana 1,357, 3,357ths, plus 300. Jin realizes he spent 2,000 mana for just 0.1% comprehension. At this rate, it'll take at least a year. He wonders if this is the best he can do for now. He also realizes it's almost time to get ready to leave. He looks at the calendar and remembers the dinner that Zir arranged for him is tonight. He stands still and thinks there's an event scheduled for 3 days from now, an event marked before he possessed this body, the anniversary of completion. Later, at Von Michel restaurant, Bruggen thanks him for being there and says his sister left earlier and should be waiting inside. As they enter, Zeit says she looks stunning dressed like that. Julie is seated and waiting. Kim looks at her and thinks he didn't know since she always wears armor. But she's very beautiful like this, and it's no surprise Deculine fell for her. Then a voice says, of course, and that he doesn't know how much effort was put into her. They turn and Wu thinks he didn't notice her, since he was focused on Julie, but he didn't expect to see her there. Josephine. Even though they act like sisters attending a marriage meeting, Josephine isn't Julie's sister. She's a named character who Deculine must always be wary of, someone who'll use any means to achieve her goals. In other words, she's a sociopath, the head of Shadow, a secret intelligence network working behind the scenes. She's also known as one of the most powerful individuals, with strength rivaling Zeit's. The only person she truly values is Julie. Because of that, harming Julie would provoke Josephine's wrath. He still doesn't know why she hasn't eliminated Deculine yet, but he definitely felt it. When she entered the room, Josephine exuded a killing intent aimed at him, tied to the villain's fate. The fact that he felt her killing intent means she's a dangerous variable. In the end, he needs to prove that Deculine is serious about Julie to overcome this threat. Bruggen says they should get to the point before the food arrives and asks when they'd like the ceremony to be. After all, it's been 3 years since the engagement. Dea calls him. Zeit says the adults are talking, Jin says me, and Bruggen says yes, go ahead and speak. The protagonist looks at Josephine and says he'll leave the relationship entirely in Julie's hands. If she doesn't believe in this marriage, then he's ready to dissolve the engagement. Zeit asks how he can talk about dissolving the marriage so lightly and why the two have been distant lately. He says if that's the case, they should work on fixing the relationship. Ending a marriage isn't a simple matter. The family elders wouldn't approve either. Julie shouts to the family head and asks to let them talk in private. Bruggen calls Josephine to step out. She agrees and wishes them a good talk. They leave the room. Dea asks what he's trying to do this time. She grits her teeth. Outside, Josephine is holding a glass and listening in. Kim looks suspiciously and thinks she's eavesdropping. Behind the door, Josephine is indeed listening. She acted like she was leaving, laughing as she walked out, but clearly it was a cover. There's no way she just left. But that might work as an opportunity. She doesn't know he knows about her. Deculine genuinely loved his fiancée, and if he can make her believe that, he can avoid the elimination variable. So Wu says he simply spoke his truth. Julie asks what truth. Jin says, as she can see, he can't just dissolve the engagement as he pleases. There's nothing they can do about it. It's already gone too far. Dea asks what he's up to, what dirty trick he plans to use to torment her now. She says that before they got engaged, he used his connections to force it, promised to reward the family elders, and asks if he remembers what he told her to convince her. The protagonist calls her, and Julie says he told her that fighting was dangerous, and because of that, forced her to stop pursuing the Imperial Order and shamelessly suggested she take the captain role of the Hydecane Order, supervised by the Eucaline family. When she refused, he spread rumors about her, and now, she asks, what's he trying to do? Kim thinks he knows all of it, that Deculine confused obsession and manic fixation for affection, and destroyed everything around her so she'd have no choice but to stay by his side. Deculine did unforgivable things. Because of that, he understands Julie's hatred better than anyone and says he won't do it again. Dea says she's not falling for it. Wu says he knows he's been holding her back this whole time, and he's aware of his wrongdoings. Julie looks surprised. Jin says he's not the only one. Her older sister and brother also went too far. Otherwise, there would have been no reason not to dissolve the marriage. Wasn't it all about family reputation? Josephine continues listening behind the door. The protagonist asks if, beyond that, he should leave the family to allow her to pursue her dream of becoming a defender. He says he possesses neither honesty nor loyalty. Julie asks what he's talking about. Kim says he's the complete opposite of the human qualities he seeks, not suitable for her. Dea tells him to get to the point. Wu says there's only one thing he can do: continue the engagement, but never marry. He wants, from the bottom of his heart, to set her free. But due to the tangled web of interests, he can't. She can use his name to protect herself as much as she wants until she's ready to realize her dream. He'll keep waiting and maintain the engagement. Julie asks what he's planning and why he's saying all this now. Jin says he's not expecting anything by saying it, but if he wanted something, it would be to see her smile once a month. That's all he wants. Dea is shocked and flustered. Josephine, listening behind the door, is also surprised. The protagonist thinks that just to avoid any elimination variable, he said the words she wanted to hear. But seeing her react so bashfully, she's so lovely acting like that. Julie asks why he would make a request like that so suddenly. Kim thinks there's no way he can deny it. Not even Deculin's love for her has become meaningless. Dea, still embarrassed, says she's not falling for it. She'll never fall for his schemes. Wu laughs, and she asks why he's laughing since she said she won't fall for it. Josephine, listening, wonders if, despite being embarrassing, it means the feelings are real. If so, maybe she'll keep watching a bit longer. The system notifies that the villain's fate, elimination variable avoided, reward acquired, is 2 shop coins. 3 days later, Wu is in the car thinking that 3 days passed so quickly. The anniversary of the end has arrived. He gets out of the car, walking through the cemetery, and thinks that just setting foot there already shakes one's emotions, simply because of the atmosphere, the sunset glow mixing with the plants and every crack in the tombstones. His heart broke before his body could even react. This is the place that carries his memories, not Deculin's. Jin looks at the grave and thinks, yes, his own. The protag remembers when he was in his real body and said he'd add an Easter egg that happened late at night. Yu says she thought it would be nice to add a bit to Deculin's backstory. He's the game's mini-boss, so it shouldn't be a problem. Kim says that would only unnecessarily increase the workload, so not to worry, they're already doing full night shifts, and asks if she knows it's directly tied to sales, so they won't increase the workload. Ara asks why and says that it's very important in a way. After all, they need to put their hearts into the game. Wu says there she goes talking nonsense again, do what she wants. He didn't ask her opinion anyway. Yu says she thinks it's a good idea. It won't be pointless. After all, Deculin has a deceased fiancé. Ara used to always come excited to share a fun idea, and Jin wonders what she found so amusing about it. He still wonders what joke she included as an Easter egg, the one that made her laugh so brightly. And to remember his own memories, he needs to find those traces. In the present, the protag, still in Deculin's body, wonders whether to say it's brilliant or cruel of her. The grave reads, "U Ara von Fergus Mahinicht," and it says she was always grateful. Kim wonders why she put her name on this grave and thinks Deculin was created based on Wu, and why Yu used her real name, and if it was to create Deculin's deceased fiancé, and why she thanked him. Wu kneels, touches the grave, and thinks that a single phrase can fill his entire body with emotion. It's almost like he can hear Ara's voice whispering, memories of those days in the past flooding back. The way she praised his drawings with a shy smile, the way she gave him a coat on a cold winter night, the way she held him and said she loved him, the way she cheered him up when he was tired, and the 7 years she spent always by his side, those memories of her. Someone watches him from afar, saying they finally found him, and calling him a filthy mage. Later, still in the same place, Jin thinks he's calmed down as if he hadn't cried before. Deculin's personality really helps at times like this. Then he notices someone approaching and says it's a familiar face and asks if it's Lockhart. The mage eliminator asks if he knows him and says that's unexpected. How dare an arrogant, conceited mage say that? The protag thinks it's the mage eliminator. This guy is a villain mini-boss available only for mages. The reason Lockhart became the natural enemy of mages is due to his magic nullification trait. The mage eliminator moves fast. Just like in other games, the nullification trait is a very overpowered ability. Not only that, Lockhart's traits have few restrictions, not depending on physical contact. There's no way to use magic at this range. The mage eliminator calls him a stupid mage and says magic doesn't work on him. Lockhart tries to hit him several times, but Kim dodges them all, thinking most mages would tremble in fear because of him. The mage eliminator charges to attack, but Wu is faster and punches him in the face. Lockhart falls to the ground. Jin approaches and says that means nothing to him. The mage eliminator insults him. Several days ago, the protag finally managed to acquire 10 shop coins and bought the mana quality upgrade. This increased his mana manipulation efficiency, and he says he'll have to fully adjust to it. But now he can release a greater amount of power using the same mana as before. The system notifies that mana quality upgrade level 1 has been applied. Now he can release mana more easily than before. Kim thinks it applies at a longer distance than expected and asks how about continuing his routine. Then he feels something strange and notices that the wood he's holding has his finger marks and asks what happened, thinking it might be an exaggeration, but it enhances the quality of a human being overall. In the present, Lockhart is lying on the ground and the system notifies about the villain's fate, variable that overcame elimination. Wu thinks he knew it. Mana quality upgrade also applies to traits. To begin with, he could already defeat the mage eliminator with just Iron Man, but since the trait itself became stronger, it was much easier than expected. A voice says that he should be able to defeat them, damn mages. It's Lockhart who says traitors against God, Vyusum, Berkt, and the Magic Tower. All of them are lunatics, vermin who can't do anything without magic. Jin thinks it's a unique ability strong enough to be considered a cheat, an intense hatred directed at mages, and that apostate expression, and says he's from the Plasma Mantle race. The Eliminator, still on the ground, lifts his head, hesitating to speak. The Blood Mantle race. That name was given because they're born covered in a crimson veil. The lineage was known to be descended from demons of past eras. They live on the continent while hiding their identity and are the opposite of beings known as mages. Just as magic was created to fight demons, the conflict between mages and the Blood Mantle race was a central element in creating the game's worldview. The protag thinks it's one of the game's main storylines. That's why those of the Plasma Mantle race have their lives threatened just for their ancestry. Purification might even be happening somewhere right now, and he says he understands. The age of oppression and repression he experienced is shameful. Even so, if he kills innocent mages, he'd just become a monster like them. Lockhart tells him to shut up and asks what he knows and says, "That's enough of this crap. Just eliminate him." Kim says he knows the Blood Mantle race is innocent. The Mage Eliminator asks what a mere mage just said. Wu says he is Deculin of the Eukalines. That's a noble bloodline that never lost its dignity. Lockhart asks if he's acting all high and mighty before being eliminated and what for. The protag replies that the only time he lost his dignity was when facing a demon. The Eukaline lineage, which has hunted demons since ancient times, starts burning violently when they see demons. It's an instinct they can't overcome, and he asks if he lost his dignity and composure before him, or wavered under his judgment, or went out of control like having a seizure, and says they are human. The Mage Eliminator thinks this is the true dignity of a noble. Kim says he can trust him until someone says to look over there quickly. Wu kicks Lockhart and says, "Then just stand still and let yourself be arrested." The man introduces himself as Inspector Ropa and says that kick earlier was incredible as expected from the head professor, and calls him the damn Eliminator and asks if he can give him a few more kicks. Jin says it's fine and to leave it. Then the protag extends his hand and releases magic, and the inspector says who would have thought magic could be so impressive. Kim hands over a wire and says that bastard nullifies magic, so magic handcuffs are useless. Better to restrain him with this iron wire instead. Ropa asks, "Really, is that serious?" and says now he understands why he was so good at escaping. It also explains why the magic-powered radar didn't work. Wu says he arrived early and asks if he was patrolling. The inspector replies they came after receiving a report and asks if it was him. Jin says no, someone else must have heard the commotion and reported it. Meanwhile, someone is listening from behind a tree. The protag says he's heading off. The inspector replies that he understands. Kim walks away, thinking it's a relief to have resolved things without shedding plasma, in the remnants of himself that still remain. He doesn't want to hurt anyone. The next day, in the Eukaline Estate training hall, a voice says there was a meeting in Berkt for the first time in 15 years. Wu asks if she came in person just to deliver the scroll. Yariel says that since he doesn't care, she had to come herself, and asks if the job of the resident head isn't to take care of the family, and how long is he going to stay naked. Jin reads the scroll, which says that recently there was an incident where a demon appeared in the Mountain of Darkness. As a result, the elders want the mages to go there to discuss this topic. The system notifies that the main quest is called Berkt. Jin says within 1 week with only one guard. Graham asks if he needs a guard and if he should call Jeff. The protag replies there's no need, especially not someone like Jeff, who's more used to handling a steering wheel than a weapon now. Yariel says he can't go without a guard, and he knows that. On the journey to Berkt, his life isn't safe. Kim asks if she's worried about him. Graham responds as if and tells him not to say such gross things. He just can't let him die before she takes the head position herself. She becomes thoughtful, then says to leave the guard matter to her. She'll handle the task in a trustworthy place. Request from the Freyheim Mail. People are training. Julie says it's great and that this attitude is right and to stay focused. Someone is watching from afar. Wondering what to do, a voice behind asks what he means. It's Veron. The man gets startled and tells him to at least make some noise when moving. He starts explaining that a request has arrived for their order and a big one, but something is bothering him, so he doesn't know whether to accept it or not. The subordinate says not to worry alone and that he can share his concerns with the captain. The vice captain says it's hard to bring such matters to her in the first place. The request is to protect Deculin, more precisely, to protect the entire train. But obviously, they knew that if they asked just to protect him, they wouldn't accept. So, they're trying to mask it a little. Varen says to accept the request. It's a request to protect an entire train, not something just anyone can do. If successful, the order's fame will instantly grow. It'll also help financially. They're a privatized order. The man mentions the captain and Deculin. The subordinate interrupts him and says, no. The captain isn't someone who lets personal matters interfere in a mission. The vice captain agrees. and says he'll bring it to the captain. Varen watches with an eliminating intent. Bercht is the name of the Alps in the northern region of the continent, at an altitude of 3,500 m, and home to the mages of the Elders' Assembly. Bercht is where all the schools of sorcery across the continent present their ideas. The magic tower is a certainty, but decisions made there must be followed even by the floating island of the mages. It exerts an immense amount of influence, to the point it can be called a pillar in the magical world. It's because the summoning assembly happens rarely, only once every few decades. A mage who participates in the Bercht summoning assembly is both honored and recognized as a renowned sorcerer. However, a Bercht summoning is also known as the Graveyard of Mages. At the train station, platform to Bercht, Julie asks if the preparations are done. The man replies, of course, and not to worry, and he's coming. The protag approaches with his assistant, who says it's April, but there's so much snow. They're really in the north. A voice thanks them for coming. From this transfer station, the Freeheim Order will be in charge of guarding the first half of the train. Kim realizes his fiancée is there. Dea, embarrassed, continues saying they'll do their best to protect them and ensure they have a comfortable trip. Wu watches her, and Julie remembers when he asked her to show her smile once a month. And in the present, she's super serious. She wonders what to do now. If she smiles now, should she? How do you smile? A wide smile or just a light one? And why does she have to go through this? The vice captain thinks that even though he completely hates the guy, she's doing her best because of him. She's truly worthy of respect. And he says he'll handle it. Varen approaches, introducing himself, and says he's assigned to the guard duty this time. The two only came there to show respect after being given such an important role. The man says that this brat is a skilled man, recognized by their orders, so there's no need to worry. Jin thinks he's a skilled man. Just in case, he should check him with keen vision, and feels no special energy coming from him, wondering if he's overthinking. Varen says that most mages are accompanied by an escort, so one has been assigned to a cabin. He'll be responsible for the cabin the mage will be in. The protagonist says he'll be in his care. Julie says that's it from her side and wishes a safe trip. She turns and walks off, looking back and smiling. The vice captain doesn't understand a thing. Kim also smiles, thinking she kept her promise. Several hours later, inside the train, a voice says he can sleep if he's tired. There are still many hours ahead. Someone responds that they'll sleep a bit. The train keeps moving. The assistant is asleep. And Wu thinks that a Bercht summoning is also called the Mage's Grave. There's a special reason Bercht is seen as the pillar of the magic world, while also having such contrasting second faces. It's because of the unexpected event that occurs every time the Bercht summoning assembly happens, the train attack. Passing through that event unharmed is one of the many causes of Deculane's elimination. It's like an intelligence game. This game would be about choosing the safe train among those heading to Bercht. If one wants a safer option, then they buy information on which train will be attacked. If it were the original Deculane, he would have done that. However, that's not possible now because he cut off all the dark connections after possessing Deculane's body. That's why, before coming, he made several preparations to protect himself. For example, that's why he acquired the martial arts techniques of the legendary fighter Estrin using comprehension. Anyway, Alan seems to be sleeping deeply even after causing a commotion from excitement earlier. Several days ago, Jin asked if he'd go to Bercht as his assistant, and says it's dangerous, so he's free to decline. Alan got emotional and said it's a great honor for someone like him. The protagonist, with his germophobic personality, said, if snot starts dripping from his nose, he won't bring him along. In the present, Kim thinks it was unexpected, didn't think he'd come along, even knowing how dangerous it is, and wonders if maybe he's more ambitious than he thought. Then the train stops. Some people get off, Wu stays seated, thinking there's only one station left now, Bercht, and nothing has happened so far. He wonders if he chose the right train, and thinks he made thorough preparations, but they may have been in vain. He's wearing a Georg dress jacket, Georg dress pants, and the shoes too. The potential was unlocked by the Midas touch, increasing defensive capabilities. Before Jin left, he used the Midas touch on clothes from a well-known master to boost defense. The system notifies Steelwood Shuriken, performance enhanced by Midas touch, and the protagonist strengthened various steel wood pieces scattered inside the train. Even applied it to Alan's clothes, naturally protective. Integrity was greatly improved thanks to the Midas touch. Kim keeps thinking he's used the Midas touch so much recently that he doesn't have much mana left and wonders if he should have used it on other things. Then thinks no, important preparations, but it's better if nothing happens. Hopes things stay peaceful like this. The train keeps moving until an explosion happens. A few days before Deculane's departure, Giltheon asks if they give her a lot of work at the Magic Tower. Sylvia says there are many tasks, but she also missed some classes. The family head says that even if she's going to be an archmage in the future, she keeps working harder than anyone. Elad asks if she didn't do that much. How could she become an archmage? And thinks she's honestly not worried about Ephorine, but wanted to see more of Deculane's classes, and asked why they left so early for the Berkt assembly summons, saying they could have left a few days later. Giltheon pauses a bit before speaking, then asks if she's ever heard that traveling to Berkt is the graveyard for mages. Sylvia asks if that wasn't just a scary story for children. The family head replies that it's not. Every time there's a Berkt summons, some mages always lose their lives. 15 years ago, 11 died. Long ago, being summoned to Berkt meant coming from a prestigious family. Being chosen among the 20 families and participating would record the family in history. However, if families are summoned and don't participate in the assembly, they are permanently excluded from the records. And there's an important rule that a new family will take the vacant spot, and asks if she thinks it's easy to take down such prestigious families. Ilad replies no, and Giltheon says she's right. Sylvia thinks the trip to Berkt is like walking on ice, where those who want to become new prestigious wizards aim to take the lives of the existing ones, and she asks if that's the case. The head of the family replies that this is the reason they are rushing. He received information that a group is planning to attack the train that will depart later, and since he's going with her, he wants to be as cautious as possible. However, if they're discovered, it will definitely be a problem. He thinks he should explain this to his daughter, as she too will face the cruelty of this world. Then, Giltheon asks if she believes any of the 12 traditional families has always been part of this group. He says that if anyone should be punished for this, it would be all the mages. The eliminations on the way to this assembly are basically treated as magic, a natural end. In the present time, still on the train, it suddenly stops, and an explosion occurs. Varen looks at the protagonist. Kim stays alert until a light is emitted. Alan wakes up and sees something in the back, asking what that is, and tells the professor to look. The entire train is suspended mid-air. Wu feels relieved and thinks that elemental telekinesis was memorized. The martial arts of Estrin are part of that, but having memorized elemental telekinesis beforehand helped them survive. Someone is standing still, and it's a group of masked people saying it's absurd, asking about the whole train, and if the head professors are really that different. He says it's a bit surprising, but they have to start and to stay focused. If they succeed, they'll be rewarded accordingly. They throw a rope and begin descending through the opened hole, but are attacked. Jin calls them idiots, and the hidden stones are hurled into them, and the protagonist says that unfortunately for them, he already expected this much. While the group is attacked, the others still alive watch in surprise. Alan says it's an attack and asks what's going on. Kim hits him, telling him to rest a bit. The assistant faints. Wu tells a subordinate to take the child and bring him somewhere safe. If there are other passengers in other cabins, evacuate them. Varen takes the child and exits the train. Jin looks through the hole in the train and thinks it was extremely smooth. The Iron Man's 5 senses would definitely detect the difference, maybe. He says it's better to finish things before thinking too much, and that since they started this, they're aware that eliminations here will also be natural ends. Alan is placed somewhere safe. Varen looks up. Meanwhile, inside the train, the enemies have been eliminated. The protagonist sits down and thinks this was more exhausting than expected. Reducing the explosion damage while fighting drained his mana reserves. The subordinate enters the train and says he took all the other passengers to safety. Kim says, "Good job. Now they should get out of there." Until Wu notices something and thinks this guy's expression is different from before. He was also surprised by the attack, so he must be surprised too. Mana is released by Varen. Jin wonders if this is the villain's fate, and if he had been walking alongside him, hiding his trait from the beginning, and he let his guard down. The subordinate draws his sword and says it's a relief he survived, since he has to eliminate him with his own hands. The protagonist asks if he's acting like this because someone told him to, and if it was, Varen yells to stop. And if he dares say his master's name, he won't forgive him. She is an unmatched knight who would never think of such a thing, and tells him to stop that filthy imagination, and that he will be eliminated by his hands for his master. Kim thinks that judging by his reaction, this doesn't seem related to Julie, and remembers the vice captain saying this guy is someone everyone trusts. Wu realizes he has 10 mana left and wonders if he can defeat someone considered talented even among the Freyheim order in his current state. Varen charges and says his guard duty ends there. Jin blocks the attack, thinking this is the only way. The train starts moving. The protagonist cancels telekinesis, and the train falls. Elsewhere, someone asks if he'd like one, saying it's from Berkt, permanent snow ice cream. Sylvia says it's fine, he can eat it all, she's tired of it, and asks if everyone is there. Sirio, confused, asks who, and says except for Eucaline and Rewind, everyone is there, and asks if she's waiting for someone. Ilad sighs and says no. The knight watches suspiciously, and says he's going then, and to call him if she needs anything. Sylvia says Deculaine, and thinks she didn't want to have seen that. She remembers when she was at the cemetery, at the coffin of Celia von Elemen Ilade, proud mage, wife of Giltheon and beloved mother of Sylvia. Elade asks how her mother has been. It was a day she visited and talked to her mother. A normal day like any other. And she was saying that Professor Deculin is terrible. He gives too much homework, it's like he thinks his class is the only one. Until she hears a sound and hides behind a tree, looking surprised. Upon seeing it was Deculin. Although she only saw his hunched back, she sensed the noble posture. With just one look, she knew it was him, and wondered what he was doing in a place like that, as she doesn't think he's the type to mourn someone's death. Sylvia kept watching and realized he was crying and was surprised by that. Seeing him cry, someone who had always been cold and arrogant, shedding tears. In the present time, Elade thinks it was fascinating. She always thought of him as an annoying professor who acted almighty, but even he had memories of a lost loved one. Those tears, like shooting stars, continue haunting her mind. She places her hand on her chest and remembers her father saying he received intelligence data indicating that a group is plotting an attack on the train departing later. Sylvia thinks that's bothering her. That time, after hearing Deculine's class, she had something she wanted to try. If she tries using this mana stone as a medium, maybe it's possible. Of the 3 attributes of magic, Origins is created using the caster as the source. And Sylvia, whose magic is made up of 3 primary colors, began using the medium mana stone to give it form, and she succeeded. Primary colors creation. Elade strokes the bird and says from now on, his name is Swift. She looks at the bird releasing energy and tells him to fly and show what he sees. Elsewhere, smoke clears, and the protagonist stands up, saying luckily the train got stuck and didn't crash to the ground. But he thinks he broke some bones. At least he'll recover quickly, thanks to the Iron Man. Then Kim senses Mana and the subordinate approaching him. Wu wonders if he's still okay. Then Jin moves his hand, counterattacking, and realizes there's protective ki there. Varen says he's definitely persistent, and the subordinate keeps attacking. The protagonist dodges the strikes and thinks he's strong. Much stronger than him right now, even at full strength, he wouldn't be able to beat him. However, the system notifies that the determination, even when broken, remains unyielding and doesn't bow to anyone, is activated in battle and maintains constant mental power until the fight ends. Almost no mental control magic will work. Kim thinks Deculin would never bow in a situation like this. Wu keeps attacking with stones. Varen slices them in half. They stare at each other. Jin falls to the ground and grumbles. The subordinate approaches him with a sword, and the protagonist wonders if being cut by that sword will end the game like nothing happened, and if he'll open his eyes back at the office. Plasma splatters, and the bird approaches the train to observe. Kim thinks it's over, until he starts to feel something strange. Space ripples. Varen's hand begins to crack, and is severed. He screams loudly while a lot of plasma is splattered. Wu thinks he doesn't know what just happened, but this is his chance. He gets up and sweeps his opponent. Varen falls and slips out of the train, but stabs his dagger into it to hold on. Jin approaches him, stares, and the subordinate asks what he did. The protagonist replies that he doesn't know either, and more importantly, asks why he's trying to kill him, and says he doesn't remember anything happening between them. Varen asks why, since he remembers the evil acts he committed against the lady. Kim asks if he's really saying this is all for Julie, even though she didn't ask for any of it, and what Julie means to him to be doing this. The subordinate says he'll never understand, and remembers when a lady thanked her, saying it could have been really bad if not for her. Dea says it was nothing. She was just doing her duty as a knight. The guard is holding Varen, who is saying to let him go, that he didn't do anything wrong. That guy started it. The lady asks if he knows how kind her Jason is, and says she's sure he did something wrong. Jason agrees. Varen asks if she wants to lose her life. The lady asks if he hasn't learned his lesson yet, and says they'll see what happens when he's handed to the police, and that he should be begging for forgiveness. He hit her son, so he'll be charged with assault, and also with trespassing. Julie says to wait a moment and asks if she just said trespassing. The lady replies yes, and that his personality matches his social status. Dea wonders if he climbed those high walls and thinks he's also so skinny, and says she'll take the child to the police and she should rest there. The lady says that would be great for her. Then they walk and Varen says to let him go, that he was only defending himself and didn't do anything that warranted going to the police. Julie stops and says the Frisia family is infamous for his behavior, and she's sure he's telling the truth, at least partially. Varen says it's not partially. Dea shouts that still he shouldn't hit people. Varen looks down. Julie says he'll follow her. She'll teach him self-control, and asks what he thinks of that. Varen looks surprised and asks if she'll feed him. That's how the two met. After that, Varen became part of the Night Order. However, because of his childhood and personality, he couldn't get along with the others. The only person who cared for him was Julie. She asks if he's having trouble with anything. The subordinate replies that everything was fine, and thinks it really was fine, as long as he could be by the captain's side. His lady was always ahead of him, and always helped others. She didn't compromise with injustice. His respect and admiration for her grew, and so did his love for her. In the present, Veron is still hanging on, and says he knows his feelings only get in her way, and he knows they're a burden to her, but he has to eliminate him. One day, somehow, he will bring destruction to his lady. The protagonist thinks he's right. Everything bad in this game is a butterfly effect from something Deculane did, and says Veron is wrong. He will change what Deculane did and make sure Deculane's ending isn't destruction. Kim extends his hand and says to hold on. He won't hurt Julie no matter what, and to trust him. They stare at each other. Then Mana is released from Veron, who clenches his teeth. Wu says he has no intention of changing his mind. The subordinate replies no, and that he won't change his mind. He'll eliminate him no matter what. Jin picks up a stone and calls him an idiot, saying today's foolish decision will torment Julie forever. The protagonist is about to strike, and elsewhere, Dea widens her eyes. The vice captain asks if she's okay. Julie replies it's nothing. The man says she's worried about Veron again, but he can take care of himself. Dea laughs and agrees. Meanwhile, on the train, Veron falls from it and thinks of his lady and hopes she'll be happy. The bird keeps watching, and Sylvia watches everything too, thinking Deculane eliminated the guard and he fell off the cliff. And that, no, to be exact, the knight tried to eliminate Deculane first, and in self-defense, Deculane took him down. Sirio approaches, saying there they are and they should go back. The assembly will resume soon. Ilad thinks it's fine, and thinks of Deculane. Elsewhere, Lilia Fremian from the security office, deputy commander, asks if there was an explosion and an attack. The elder replies yes, but this is a common event since the Bercht assembly is near, so it's nothing serious. Lilia says she understands and asks about casualties. The elder replies yes, even though there were no injuries. 2 people are currently missing, a guard named Veron and Professor Deculane. She can hear all the details from the survivors there. Then the deputy commander notices Alan unconscious by a rock and asks who he is. The elder says he's still unconscious due to the shock. The survivor says a knight saved him. The train stayed in the air for a while, and when he woke up it had fallen, and he thinks the eliminators attempted a second strike. Lilia asks, in the air? The survivor shows a photo and says it was so shocking he had to take a picture. Fremian asks if he lifted the entire train with magic, and says it's absurd. A voice says the knight, Veron, is dead, and for some reason he tried to eliminate Deculane and ultimately failed. Professor Deculane survived. The deputy commander realizes she's receiving a telepathic message. Then she senses something. Someone is approaching, and it's Professor Deculane. The protagonist thinks if not for the strange phenomenon that happened by luck, he would have been eliminated by a knight who's not even named. Without the help of an unknown person, he'd be at the bottom of the cliff. He can't believe he's this powerless, but he wonders who helped him back then. Lilia says she sees he's safe and introduces herself, saying she has some questions about the incident. Kim asks what time it is. Fremian apologizes and says it's 3:30. Wu realizes he has 6 hours left. The deputy commander says they're formal questions, but the one with him. Jin interrupts and asks if that train is the only way to get to Bercht. Lilia replies no, there's also a road path and a sea route on the other side. She asks to be allowed to continue and to be heard out. The knight who is with him, she looks forward and doesn't see him anymore. She asks if the titular wasn't just here. The elders reply maybe he used acceleration magic. Fremian says that even after stopping the train from derailing, fighting the eliminators and Veron, he still used a high-level magic like acceleration, and wonders how much mana this guy has. She says so he's the Deculane that Lockhart spoke of. At the Bercht assembly, people are talking. Giltheon says it's almost 9:53, the time when the stars gather. Sylvia looks to the side and realizes he's still not there. A voice says before starting, they express gratitude to those who answered the call. Incredibly powerful mana is released. Iladi thinks the mana is amazing, and it must be Dezekton, the great elder of Bercht. He was the closest candidate to becoming an archmage. He's a living legend who left secular society by his own will. So, one must be at that level to even attempt to become an archmage. And a voice says that after the roll call, the assembly will begin. Giltheon of the Ilad family. He replies he's there. The voice calls Ethansil of the Brand family. She replies she's there. The voice continues calling and says Barun of the Veorad family. He replies he's there. The voice also calls Inelim of the Rewind family. He replies he's there. And the voice calls the next Deculane of the Eucline family and asks if he's still not there. Says that if he doesn't arrive before the 3rd call, it'll be assumed he didn't answer the call, and he'll be removed from the 12 sorcerers. People speak about Eucline's elimination, saying it's a big event. They were summoned for the first time 200 years ago. A young man asks about the event if many didn't already predict this, and says the current head, Dekuline, falls short compared to the ancestors. Many stories said his talent wasn't all that. Sylvia hears the rumors and wonders how Dekulin has lived his life to the point of not having a single person worrying about him. Anne thinks it's pathetic, and it bothers her. The voice calls Eucline's resident head, Dekuline, once, calls him twice, and on the third time, someone opens the door. Ilada watches, surprised, and the protagonist enters, causing a strong gust of wind. He fixes his hair and says Dekuline Graham Euclina is here. The acting head of the Eucline family has arrived. The meeting, which started in silence, progressed quickly. The first topic was about the demon that appeared on the Black Mountain. Ethansel says this is a more serious matter than the demon's appearance in the capital. Each school must give orders or cooperate with the church, and mages must be sent to suspicious regions. And everything was resolved easily. Ethansel, the representative with divinity, gave her opinion, and since no family opposed it, the topic ended right there. A voice says there will be a short break. Kim thinks this is tiring. He ran like crazy so he wouldn't be late for this meeting. Right now, he has neither mana nor stamina left, and to think his appearance wasn't even affected despite his condition. Dekulane's traits and attributes are annoyingly impressive. They're on break. Then someone calls him. It's Alan, eyes full of tears, asking if he's okay. Anne says he's sorry for arriving late. They told him he couldn't enter because the meeting had already started. Wu says it's fine and not to worry. Anne thinks he can't consider this kid innocent anymore. There's definitely something wrong about his identity, and wonders why he's doing this and for what. And thinks of a famous movie quote from his old world. Jin calls his assistant and tells him to stay close to him from now on. Alan asks what he means. The protagonist thinks he needs to keep his friends close and enemies even closer. It's better to keep an eye on him and find out what he really is, no matter the cost. Later, still in the same place, the voice says the next topic is about what to do regarding the plasma shroud priest who appeared. Kim thinks that's a sensitive topic, and it won't end as easily as the previous ones. Someone slams the table. It's Vathan, who says the plasma shroud race is like cockroaches. They reproduce by secretly planting eggs inside society, spreading across the land. Ethansel asks with what evidence he says such things and says they themselves have no way to differentiate plasma shrouds from other races. Vathan says they can just invent a way. There must be a way using the race's special traits, and they must be eradicated as soon as possible using the Imperial Magic Tower. A voice tells him to be careful with his words. Wu thinks he knew the opinions would be controversial from the start. Vathan says he doesn't know why, but the plasma shrouds are recognizing and gathering among themselves, and he knows without a doubt that they have a leader, and they don't know what they're planning. Ethansel says that's just speculation. Vathan questions speculation. Knowing the plasma shrouds have a leader and not knowing what they're doing doesn't make her suspicious? Countless mages lost their lives due to indecision 60 years ago. The atmosphere grows heavy. Giltheon smiles and asks what Eucline's Dekulan thinks about this. He says his family is a great family of exorcists that has fought to eradicate demons for a long time. Jin thinks that as someone from the present, he's well versed in these kinds of situations and that hatred born from abandoning rational thought always leads to unnecessary misfortune. However, setting those things aside, suppressing the plasma shrouds isn't right. Even if he can't stop them, he at least needs to delay that decision for the main quest in the future. Because the real common enemy in this world isn't the plasma shrouds. He says that long ago they really were enemies, but if one reviews every part of the literature, it all stems from a misunderstanding. Vathan asks about a misunderstanding. The protagonist replies yes. 237 years ago, during the Rodrin witch incident, Rodrin was condemned as a witch despite being innocent. From that event, a huge wave of suppression occurred, and many plasma shrouds were executed. They retaliated and the cycle of plasma spilling continued. The incident from 60 years ago that he mentioned is purely political, since a monostone mine was discovered in plasma shroud territory. Vathan yells about politics, saying it's ironic to hear that from the family who ended up with the mine, and he's certain they have demonic bloodlines. The Eucline family, demon hunters, should know that. Kim says Eucline's tradition is to hunt demons, not to exterminate the plasma shroud race. Vathan says they are demons. Wu stares at him and asks if he'll take responsibility for those words. He says not to declare humans as demons so lightly. The person who says such things can become the demon themselves. And so, the first meeting ended without a conclusion, and the topic was postponed for the next day. Giltheon says it's a shame he'll have to part from her until the next meeting. Sylvia replies it's just until tomorrow. Her father says that's Bercht family rule. The member must stay in a separate room, and asks if she'll be okay alone. Elad asks what he's talking about. Normal children her age have their own rooms. Ludwig gets emotional and says he'll see her tomorrow. Those from the Berkt family have high mana density, and because of that, all kinds of magical phenomena can happen at night, so she must read the hotel rules. His daughter says she'll be fine and not to worry. Elsewhere, someone is reading a paper. It's Sylvia, saying it seems the rules are meant to scare children and she can simply sleep without worries, then goes to bed. Later in the room, Elad is sleeping until she wakes up and gets up, saying she's thirsty. She walks to get water and feels something strange. A powerful energy is released. Sylvia is startled and immediately grabs the rule sheet, noticing the space has suddenly turned into a passage, and wonders if she did something wrong. She looks carefully and reads that once you lie on the bed, you must avoid walking until dawn or you might end up elsewhere. Ilada asks if she's in this situation because she left the bed before dawn, and says that in the second hall where she stayed for a few days, no such magical phenomenon occurred, but things changed because she's now near the Elder Assembly where mana is denser. She was too naive, thinking it'd be fine as long as she didn't leave the room. She needs to calm down, she's very scared, and when she turns around, she wonders if there's something there and where she's going. The rules state that Hotel Rosario has only one floor. Do not go up or down any stairs that appear. If you find any open doors along the way, do not enter or look inside. Sylvia runs desperately with her eyes closed, thinking she can't panic. There is a door that can take her back. She starts banging on a door and calling for help, but the rules say that if someone knocks, you must not respond or make noise. Ilad, still desperate, calls out for someone, anyone. Then she wakes up, eyes full of tears, and someone asks if she got lost. It's the protagonist. Sylvia looks frightened. Kim tells her to come in, and Ilad thanks him and says she's sorry. She got up from bed and suddenly ended up in the hallways. Wu says incredible magical phenomena always happen within Berkt. There are many spirits that lost their minds to magic, and she should have read the rules properly. He thinks it's an appearance that never changes, and an expressionless gaze, and wonders if he managed to open the door because he's a Dekulane. Sylvia looks to the side and senses energy moving. A skull is summoned. Jin tells her to stay calm. Attacks are launched at the skull, and it's shattered. Floating stones appear. Ilad says that was amazing, and asks if those wandering ghosts really died. The protagonist says not to be surprised. It's simply a type of specialized magic that can eliminate them, but it's nothing to be proud of, since magic wasn't made to eliminate. Sylvia stares at a point and says that's flame flow. Kim says she's right. She shows lightning, metallization, and the other is goblin fire. Wu replies that all were correct, and it was a good job once again. Ilad thinks he didn't even look, and wonders if she should start doing it sloppily on purpose. She releases her magic and asks, "How about this?" Jin replies she did well, but there's some instability in the wind magic circle she mixed with fire. Sylvia asks what her weakness is. The protagonist replies she should figure that out herself. Ilad says he told Ephraim what hers was. Kim says Ephraim figured it out on her own. Sylvia stays silent, and Wu tells her to be more patient. Time is on her side. As long as she stays dedicated, progress will surely come, and she can work toward it slowly, one step at a time. And she's one of 3 people in the world with the talent for it. Ilad remembers when she was told about her abnormal talent, that she was destined to be an archmage, strong, young, with a bright future. Those were things Sylvia heard countless times growing up, insincere, worthless praise, and wonders why Dekulane's words sound different. In the present, still at night, Ilad is sleeping while Jin is reading, until energy moves, and the protagonist wonders what that energy is. Then he heads outside, and thinks that the Tycoon of Wealth has activated. Except for Berkt, this mountain path is basically inaccessible. Maybe he'll get a rarer item than expected. As Kim walks, ghosts approach to scare him, but Wu doesn't care, and calmly keeps walking. The ghost is confused, and other ghosts block his path, float beside him, trying to frighten him, until Jin stops, apologizes for the trouble, and asks if they've seen an item with high magic content drop nearby. The ghost says something in another language. The protagonist doesn't understand and asks what's up with him. Anne says he found it. The system shows a purified mana tree fragment with information. A fragment of a mana tree struck by lightning. This wood, naturally rich in mana, was purified by lightning, becoming excellent material. Kim says he got a material better than expected, and thinks that since coming to this world he's been training and researching nonstop, and was in crisis due to Dekulane's average talent. If he can make a wand with this, maybe his power will grow faster. And this was a better gain than he imagined. The assembly resumed with a much more tense atmosphere. Vathan says their plasma is demonic. That's the only truth that matters, and asks if that doesn't mean they're demons. Wu says that's nonsense. If you put sugar in a glass of water, would you call it a glass of sugar? The heated debate between Dekulane and Berun left all the present mages surprised. Voices ask if Deculine is siding with the enemy and say they thought he'd be the biggest supporter of the Plasma Shroud purification plan, so this is unexpected. Giltheon asks what he's trying to prove and what he's planning. Sylvia thinks that just like her father, everyone suspects that Deculine's defense of the Plasma Shrouds is some kind of secret scheme, but they're all screwed. Deculine is just stating the obvious. A voice says, that's enough. It seems they're unable to reach an agreement, so they will revisit the topic of the Plasma Shrouds at another time and move on to the next item on the agenda. The meeting quickly continued through the remaining topics, and the assembly, which had lasted several days, finally came to an end. They leave. Vathan bumps into Jin, clearly irritated, and walks away. The protagonist thinks he did his best for the future of the main quest, but it seems he ended up antagonizing a few people because of it. The next day, in Burkett's commercial district, Kim is examining something, stones in his hand, and also thinks he has to finish his staff before leaving Burkett, wondering which other materials he should use for his monetary staff. Until the assistant notices something and calls him. Wu asks what's wrong. Alan points and says it's his benefactor. He was only able to get there safely because of her. Jin realizes that person is the deputy commander. She also notices him. They decide to take Lilia out for lunch to show their gratitude for bringing the assistant safely to Bercht. Fremion thanks them for the meal and apologizes for bringing it up, but says she needs to ask some questions to finalize the investigation. She asks what happened to his escort, the knight Veron. The protagonist replies that he lost his life in the attack. The waiter keeps bringing food. The deputy commander wonders what's different about him and thinks of Lockhart. She remembers the past, in the Imperial territory, at the Imperium Investigation Office. Lilia says he will be sent to Rekordak, the worst prison. That's what he deserves for eliminating so many innocent mages, and asks if there are any objections. She says they always go quiet when she enters the interrogation room, and to activate his ability already. The mage eliminator smiles and releases a terrifying mana along with an object, unleashing energy. Fremion sits down, relieved, slams the table, and calls him a fucking idiot. She asks why he did something that could worsen their bloodline's reputation. She told him not to be rash. She was planning to eliminate him. If it were revealed he's one of them, those who wish to oppress them would only gain more power. Lockhart asks if she really thinks she'll ever get the chance to live peacefully in the Empire. The deputy commander replies that as long as his identity isn't revealed, it's possible. The only difference between them and ordinary people is birth. The mage eliminator says she's wrong, that they were born with demonic gifts, and both of them know others fear that. Lilia tells him to shut up, that plasma shrouds aren't the only ones born with gifts. Besides, why would he attack Deculine when the Euclines were already under surveillance? Lockhart asks if she plans to eliminate him. Fremion replies that for now, they're just observing. But if that bastard keeps acting like that, she doesn't see why not. The mage eliminator says not to, because he is a true noble. There's no need to eliminate him. The deputy commander scoffs at the idea of a true noble and asks if he knows how many crimes he committed. Lockhart thinks of the elegance he had when declaring the plasma shrouds were humans, not demons. A face full of confidence that showed no limits. If there were more nobles like him in the world, they could blend in and live with everyone else. And says Deculine didn't eliminate him even knowing he was a plasma shroud. Lilia asks if he knows that Eucline's ancestors were at the forefront of the people's oppression and genocide. The mage eliminator replies he didn't. But if they treat him like his ancestors just because of the same blood, they're no different from those they claim to condemn. Fremion tells him not to act like he's some wise guy. Lockhart asks how long she thinks she can keep her roots hidden and stay in that position. The deputy commander replies, forever. You can't tell a plasma shroud just by appearance or plasma. The eliminator says not to forget about the foods they can't eat, you just have to avoid them. Lilia says that of all times, the Empire's situation is bad. A new ruler will inherit the throne soon. They had to monitor her to know her thoughts about plasma shrouds. Until then, the people must do nothing, and he must shut up and stay in Rekordak. In the present, Fremion is eating and wondering what's different about him. She can't see what makes him a true noble. He's just another despicable idiot. Someone approaches. The deputy commander covers her nose from the smell of alcohol. The protagonist asks what brings him here. He has nothing to say to him. It's Ihelm. He says really? Because there's something he's very curious to hear, from the depths of his dark and shadowy heart. Meanwhile, at the Freyden Knight's order, Julie asks him to repeat what he said. The man, with his head down, replies that it seems Veron lost his life during the mission. Dea says to prepare immediately. They need to hear Deculine's explanation when he returns. Meanwhile, in Bercht, Lilia wonders if this man is from House Rewind and what's going on. Jarian says he was completely unpredictable during the entire conference. He didn't understand anything, and asks why he acted that way at the risk of offending the other houses, and if he's really afraid of the plasma shrouds. Fremion widens her eyes. Ihelm asks if he didn't previously say he wanted to wipe out the plasma shrouds and even insisted they were an inferior race unworthy of living in these lands, and says he heard the article he wrote condemning them is still in the university's archives. He asks if by any chance the new slave working in his lab is a plasma shroud. Alan says he's going too far and to stop insulting him. Wu says to calm down, it's okay, and that he's like a fully rotten cheese. No wonder he thinks that way. It's understandable someone like him wouldn't understand. Jerian smiles and says he heard he has 6 months left until the research presentation. Or was it 3? And says he'll see how long he can keep up this act before his vile nature is exposed. Ihelm leaves, and the deputy commander wonders if Deculine really acted that way at the risk of offending others, and if he's actually on the plasma shroud side. This Deculine? It's hard to believe, and she thinks of Lockhart, wonders if what he said was really true. The next day before leaving Berkt, Jin visited one of the most renowned artisans to commission his staff. The system notifies a side quest. Enough fame or infamy, acting kind-hearted or as someone changed, bring the best materials that can intrigue Lokalok and visit him at least twice. A staff made by Lokalok, he's a well-known artisan, even the former Deculine supposedly visited. And through this, an unknown quest was completed. The train moves, and on it, returning to the Empire, the protagonist ends up in the same carriage as Barun. He didn't even try to hide his hostility during the ride, but luckily it didn't escalate. Kim thinks this long journey is finally coming to an end. Then elsewhere, people get off the train. The assistant stretches and says they just need to catch one more train, and wonders when they'll see anything besides snow, until they go silent upon seeing Julie. Wu says her name. She stares at him and says she heard he was attacked. She's glad he's okay. Jin thanks her for the concern and thinks the news about Veron must have already reached them. He doesn't know how the story got to them, but it seems many aren't happy he was the only survivor. Dea says she read about it in the papers. They said the two worked together to rescue the survivors, and she only wants to ask one thing. The protagonist asks if it's about Veron's last moments. The two stare at each other in silence. Kim thinks he planned to tell her everything, that Veron tried to kill him and things ended that way after their fight, and he wanted at least to tell her the truth. But now, looking her in the eye, the words won't come out. He wonders if he should say it, because the truth is too cruel. Julie's convictions are unshakable, but her heart isn't that strong. That's what he knows about her nature. And if she heard the truth, she would definitely blame herself. She'd torment herself as if her subordinate's mistake was her own. Wu thinks for her sake, the truth must remain buried, even if it means being hated by some. A voice says the 4th train to the Empire has started boarding. If you have a ticket, approach immediately. People start walking. Jin says he got emotional. Dea, head lowered, thanks him and says they'll be on their way now, and wishes him good rest. She walks away with her subordinates. The protagonist thinks he's a bigger fool than he thought. He can't even rid himself of these overwhelming emotions in Deculane's heart. Alan says those people are just a bunch of irrational monkeys. They were also victims of the incident, yet the way they looked at them was so hostile. Kim says not to worry about them. They're just a bunch of fools. The assistant asks why he held back. The protagonist notices that Sylvia is in front of him and asks what she means by that. Elad hands him a book and says it's her repayment for the favor. She walks away and the assistant asks what that was about. Kim replies that he's not sure either. He sighs and thinks that this whole trip has been exhausting and just wants to get home and rest. So he tells them to head home, and they board the train. A voice says that during the first ambush, Deculane handled the situation and rescued the survivors with Veron. Then, in the second ambush, the train flipped over, and it seems Veron fell during that attack. However, the VIP car, where Professor Deculane was, miraculously got stuck on a cliff. In short, both tried their best to control the situation, but Veron fell during the second ambush. Elsewhere, a voice gives thanks. It's Julie. The vice captain asks if there's anything they can take as a keepsake. The guard replies no, and the man talks about the person behind the ambush. The guard says there's an unwritten rule not to talk about the crime that unfolded on the way to Berkt. Dea walks to the edge of the cliff and says she lost her right arm and to think he would leave this world in vain, calling him a damned idiot. Somewhere else, someone yells for Deculane. It's Yeriel, very annoyed, asking if he wrote another check in the family's name. The servant tells her to calm down. Graham asks if he's already forgotten what he said, that their finances are not good, and at this rate, they won't last more than 2 months. Wu thinks that the wand production cost more than expected, so this is what happens when he writes checks. And he wonders about the Eucline finances, which can only last 2 more months. He says they need to calm down, as he has a way to get more money. They go to another room full of items. Yeriel asks what he's doing now and says those are the items he bought at the auction just to show off his wealth. Jin tells her to just watch and act like a lady. Graham gets annoyed, but the servant holds her back. The protagonist thinks he didn't know before why the auction items were draining the wealth tycoon's energy. He thought they were just art investments that might exist in the real world. But recently, while preparing for the trip to Berkt, he realized he could use those items to increase wealth. He uses the Midas touch. Yariel asks what he's doing standing there with his hand outstretched and if he's completely gone crazy. Kim says he's ready and will re-auction all those items and to call an appraiser. Graham is outraged, asking why he's reselling them when it hasn't been long since he bought them, and says he should keep the antiques. They won't even fetch half what he paid. Wu tells her to be quiet. Yariel says he's throwing money away. Jin tells Roy to call an appraiser right now and transport the items. Then, the protagonist looks to the side and notices a vase glowing. The system notifies that it's the vase of the Western master artisan, described as a vase developed with the magical talent of the soul and heart of the master artisan. Due to the Midas touch, its potential was awakened. Type: ceramic flower vase. Kim thinks a vase worth 2.5 million elni became an item he doesn't want to sell and says to handle them carefully. Graham says they need to talk and asks if he's really going to sell all that and if he plans to bankrupt them. Wu replies, not to worry, they'll make money with it. Yariel asks how can she not worry. Jin says it's time to go to work. Elsewhere, Tower of Magic University. Magical Exploration Club room. People sit around a table playing cards. Ephorine says she has a full house with kings. Her teammates get disheartened, saying she's already won 3 rounds. Luna gets excited, saying she's free from cleaning this week. A voice says they were so close, just 1 card away. Ephorine says that's loser talk. She laughs and thinks it feels strange. She came from a barony, didn't go to the academy, and since joining the tower, she's been hated by others. Not just students, even professors don't go easy on her. There have been many incidents, but who would have thought she'd be in a club with friends now? And she says she really enjoys this magical exploration club. Julia says on the outside they're just a normal magical exploration club, so be careful what you say. Someone enters and calls them ignorant kids, asking what the hell this club is doing. It's Retlin. Another professor says exactly what he said. These low-class commoners are taking up tower space for useless things. Luna thinks they're always creating problems over anything involving commoners. The old man asks about CEMC and says it's ridiculous. What are they doing? Ephorine thinks this visit is unwelcome but expected and must be handled with dignity. She says they submitted a club creation plan and got approval. They're an official club. Retlin asks who the hell allowed such a stupid club and tells her to wait. She's the scum who was punished that day, isn't she? Luna thinks, here we go again with the scum thing. The old man tells her to stop glaring at a professor like that. Meanwhile, Beck laughs. Retlin says if she's so confident, she should say who allowed the club, as no professor would approve such a group. Ephorine notices something, but says nothing. The old man says he knew it. No professor would authorize a club like this. Then, the protagonist appears and says he was the one who approved it, asking if there's a problem. Luna thinks, Deculane. Kim says he heard his voice echoing in the hall, so is there a problem with that? They should have asked for his permission first. He thinks Yariel nagged all morning, and now at the worst moment, this jerk causes trouble. Plus, he's sweating everywhere. The old man wipes his face and says that's not what he meant. He asks if the place isn't too shabby. He just thought Imperial University mages deserved better furniture and equipment and says it saddens him to see them like that. He'll take responsibility and replace it all. Wu says he's always so thoughtful and the place does seem old and moldy. Retlin says he'll take special care of it. Beck gets really angry but says nothing. Jin says disgusting cockroaches will always be cockroaches, and since it's resolved, he's leaving. Beck watches him walk out. Still inside the university, in the classroom, the students comment that it's been a while since Professor Deculane's last class. He was in Berkt, and wonder what happened there. They mention the train accident was in the Mage newspaper. The train floated. It was insane. They ask if he'll talk about it. The protagonist tells them to be quiet because class is starting. The first topic today is pure elements and magical interference. Magical interference is when a mage's spell is interrupted by another's intervention. Before diving into the core topic, they'll warm up. Kim moves his fingers and stones in the boxes float to each student's table. They look surprised. Wu says those stones cost 3,000 eln each, and they'll stay suspended like that. The task is to grab them using telekinesis. If they succeed, they're theirs. Ephorine screams loudly. Her friend Julia puts a hand over hers. Jin says that as a conjurer, the ability to block interference is just as important as performing it, so treat it as if the defender has the advantage. But try anyway. The students reach out and begin. The protagonist watches, thinking he only levitated 3 last time, but he recently memorized basic telekinesis and needs to practice more. He's also curious, even though they're freshmen. He wants to see how long his telekinesis lasts against 150 mages and how he fares against top-tier talents. Luna thinks those magical supplies are expensive. The The sponsor's money is almost gone, and wonders if he's just giving out magic stones now. She thanks him for the little gift. Sylvia looks sideways and sees Ephraim succeeding. She recalls the professor saying Ephraim learned on her own. Iladi thinks she can't lose. The students begin overexerting themselves, and some fall ill. The assistant says he's amazing, not leaving any openings even against 150 opponents. The students can't do anything. Kim thinks he's even holding back. Didn't expect the freshmen to get nosebleeds, run out of mana, and faint. Wu looks surprised at one of the stones. It's Sylvia's. Everyone else is trying hard. Elaide sighs and smiles. Jin approaches and says, "Well done." She was the first. Sylvia bows her head. The protagonist thinks he expected her to get it and wonders if anyone else will. He looks to the side. Another student succeeded. It's Luna, totally exhausted, saying she did it. Illa doesn't like that at all. While the others are still struggling, Kim says that's enough, calls them pathetic brats, and says they'll take a short break and make sure to clean up their mess. Everyone has their heads on the table, exhausted. Julia asks how her partner managed to do that and says that honestly she couldn't pull it off even if her life depended on it. Ephraim says she almost lost her life, but she realized something. She can't understand telekinesis, but while forcing her way through the spell, she felt like something inside her broke. The redhead is impressed and feels jealous. Sylvia overhears them talking and thinks it's absurd, wondering how the girl who came in last place in the previous test suddenly made it to second. She remembers that he clearly told her he had never taught Ephraim personally, so that rumor about Deculane staying late that day to teach her was true, and wonders if he lied to her and why he cares so much about that idiot, calling her arrogant. Later, still in the room, Wu says that in the warm-up exercise they just did, they all struggled with the concept of magical interference. However, there was an easier way to neutralize his telekinesis. Those who succeeded might have started to understand what that is. He's talking about mana interference, which is a well-known technique. Unlike regular magical interference, which blocks a spell that's already been cast, mana interference analyzes the opponent's spellcasting sequence and scrambles it before it finishes. But it's not that widely used because it has a serious limitation. A boy wonders about mana interference since it would require knowing a bunch of spell formulas. Jin says, of course, you can only interfere with spells whose formulas you already understand, so it's not exactly popular. In real combat, people usually use a barrier or counter with another spell. But no pain, no gain. Take this opportunity to explore mana interference thoroughly. The principle of the technique is to identify the main circuit of the magic circle. Whether it's a destructive spell, a support spell, or tied to a specific element, there will always be a distinct main circuit. In short, you find the circuit of the opponent's spell and break the casting process right there. Once you're comfortable with this type of mana interference, full magical interference becomes much easier. Then, using several magic circles as examples, he shows them how to identify main circuits. First, the wind-piercing blade circle. Destructive spells always have circuits that radiate outward from the center, as if detonating or expanding. Next is a support-type spell. 2 hours later, the protagonist calls out to the next student and says there are still a few things left, but time's up. They wasted time, so they can't complain. They can work on the rest and learn through their own imagination. The semester exams are coming, but before that, there's a public practical session. What they saw today is important, so study hard. That's all for today. Kim leaves and shuts the door, and people are confused, asking why he stopped midway and what's wrong with him. They say it feels like he walked out in the middle of a mess. Julia asks how they're supposed to imagine the rest. Luna agrees, but thinks she made a good discovery today. It's hard to put into words. Then, someone calls her. It's Beck. The redhead asks why he's picking a fight again. Last time, he even dragged Professor Retland into it, and now he can't even look them in the eye. She asks what his problem is. Beck says it's because a commoner like her doesn't know her place and keeps trying to show off. He asks what the hell she did to go from last place to second. Ephraim thinks to just ignore him and says that even if she told him, Beck insults her, calling her a shameless bitch, and asks if she bribed him or something. Luna asks what he just said. Beck asks if he said anything wrong and claims everyone knows she's been getting private lessons from Professor Deculane. Ephraim yells that it's not true. Beck tells her to explain how an idiot like her, who could never graduate, improved so much in so little time. He asks if Deculane went easy on her, maybe even gave her a magic stone as a gift. That would explain everything. A girl like her, with no house or parents, couldn't possibly. Luna, furious, tells him to go on and dares him to finish that sentence. Beck asks if she really thinks her threats work on him. Ephraim tells him to keep talking if he's not afraid. Sylvia watches them. Someone pulls Ephraim. It's her partner Julia, telling her not to do it and asking what she'll do if she ends up in another disciplinary hearing. Luna remembers the professor saying a mage must always stay calm. The redhead looks at her and Ephraim thanks her, saying she's right. She got mad for no reason. Talking to an idiot like him probably cost her a few brain cells. Julia says it's okay now that she's calmed down. Luna starts walking away and says they should grab something to eat on the way back. Julia agrees, and Beck asks where they think they're going. The redhead runs off, and Sylvia keeps watching. Elsewhere, someone stomps the ground. It's Ephraim, saying she barely held back thanks to her partner earlier, and wonders what she'll do about that idiot from now on. He makes her so angry that she doesn't think she'll be able to go near him without reacting. She asks what she's supposed to do about a spoiled noble like him. Then Luna notices something. Sylvia. Elad says they need to talk. Ephraim wonders what she wants and tells her if she's trying to start a fight. She picked the wrong time and should just leave her alone. Sylvia asks if she's getting private lessons from Deculane. Luna, annoyed, says she knew it. Go ahead and say it. Also, why the hell would he ask that? He doesn't even know the story between her and Deculane. Why would he teach her? She doesn't know anything. She asks if she really stopped her just to say all that nonsense, and why everyone is trying to piss her off today. Ilada thinks it sounds like she's telling the truth and says, whatever then. Ephraim says she has no right. Sylvia asks if she knew after her father's removal. Deculane didn't enter his lab for 3 whole years, not once. Luna says of course Deculane can't do anything without her father. He was the genius. Ilad says then she must also know Deculane started going to that lab every day 3 months ago. He cleaned the place, picked an assistant professor, and bought a bunch of magic items. She asks what she thinks that means. Ephraim thinks that can't be, wonders if he's continuing her father's research. She doesn't believe Deculane has the mind or talent to do that on his own. Luna clenches her fist and says who knows, maybe he's testing things. He's a professor after all, and asks what that has to do with her. Sylvia smiles and says it's nothing, just in case she didn't know. Ephraim lowers her head. The next class day, a few days later, all the students are gathered. Julia asks what kind of practical training he has planned and why he brought them all outside. Luna says she doesn't know, but it looks like he's up to something again. Beck bumps into the redhead, and she says it's that jerk again. The protagonist tells everyone to be quiet, class is starting. As mentioned before, today is the final practical training before the semester exams. Today's class will be cloths drop, revealing several people watching them. Kim says it's a public exercise. Ephraim looks surprised and asks how many people are out there. Wu says they'll be training using magic. They must face each other and cast spells, using up to 3 pure element spells. Don't worry about winning, just focus on the process. He'll supervise and note strengths and weaknesses. They just need to improve based on his feedback. Professor Retlan will make sure no one gets seriously hurt so they don't have to worry. The professor says to leave it to him and to get started. First, Eurozon. Step up and pick your opponent. 2 students go up. Jin tells them to begin. The magic duels proceed smoothly. The students exchange spells. Retlan stays alert, and the protagonist takes notes. At first, the students were uncomfortable, not used to this type of class, but with time, they learn to focus and cast their spells. An explosion occurs, and Kim announces the winner is Ilad. The nobles laugh, saying another commoner lost. They joke that they should have applied to be servants of their house instead, and question why they even bother coming to the magic tower. Luna hears and thinks Sylvia would have crushed them too. She tells her partner to cheer up. He did well. Wu says next is Beck, pick your opponent. The student he chooses. Ephraim. She thinks she'll be fine. The 2 face each other. Beck asks if she's sure she'll be okay. There's no one here to give her secret lessons on how to win a duel. Luna says that's enough of that nonsense and asks if his parents only taught him how to talk crap. She says the way he tries to imitate Deculane is complete trash. She raises her arm, releasing magic, and says she'll make sure he knows that his magic is as pathetic as he is. The 2 charge at each other, and Beck asks what she just said, then insults her, calling her a lowly worm, and says he'll help her see her parents again today. He attacks with powerful magic, and Ephraim is thrown far, causing a big impact. With his magic circle invoked, Beck calls her a piece of shit, until he senses another magic that's not his but Luna's. She says there's an old saying that always comes to mind since she entered the magic tower. Something like, all nobles deserve a beating. Ephraim then attacks and throws Beck far away. Julia says it was well done, and the apprentice is on the ground groaning until he opens his eyes. Luna approaches and asks what it feels like to be completely crushed by a worm. A voice says the winner is Ephraim. It's the protagonist, who adds that all those idiots couldn't even fight for long and now it's already over. He invited all those people for nothing, and they couldn't show anything worth watching. A voice asks if, in that case, he would give another chance. It's Luna. She says they were supposed to cast 3 pure element spells during the duel, but she only managed 1 because her opponent was too weak. It ended before she could finish the task. Kim says he understands her point. She might not receive proper feedback through no fault of her own, so it would be unreasonable to conclude the evaluation like that. She can select a second opponent from anyone present. Ephraim points and says she chooses Professor Deculane as her opponent. Retlan says to look at this girl, asking what she's saying. A voice comments that she must really be insane. Sylvia watches, and Luna thinks, just as expected, everyone thinks it's crazy. Well, she knew that, it's not like she's stupid. This is an opportunity, a chance to fight Deculane, something she's dreamed of for a long time. If she can make the most of this, it's okay to be seen as a lunatic for a while. Retlan asks if anyone has ever seen such a degenerate child and wonders if she even knows what she's doing. Wu tells him that's enough and to get a grip, he will allow it. He did say she could choose anyone as her opponent with no restrictions, so he'll be her opponent. That said, a professor can't fight evenly with a novice, so he won't attack first. She'll win if she manages to make him move from where he's standing. Effarini agrees. They face each other, and Luna thinks her heart is pounding. She's wanted this for so long, a fight against Deculine. Jin says she may begin. Effarine starts channeling her magic and thinks she can't do anything against someone more powerful than herself right now, and she knows the battle itself is pure madness. The protagonist blocks with his shield and Luna keeps attacking, thinking she wants to use this opportunity to understand the gap between them, between herself and the one she will defeat one day. Kim also casts magic and smiles as flames erupt. Effarine attacks too, thinking she can do more. Earth element. The fire spells grow stronger and more intense. The people around watch in awe. Luna's magic weakens while Wu's becomes more powerful until her magic shatters. Effarine grits her teeth, realizing they're projectile attacks. Jin says he has a habit when it comes to magic. The larger the movements, the clearer the habit becomes. Luna thinks it's magical interference again. Then, with her next spell, Effarine notices something strange. Her magic won't activate. She wonders if he did something to her magic circuit. The protagonist says she won't be able to cast any more magic in front of him. Luna wonders what the hell that is and thinks he disabled her ability to use magic. Still, the duel isn't over. She's more confident using her body anyway. She charges to attack him physically, but Kim flicks his finger and sends her flying with a huge impact. He watches her and thinks, an effective combination of pure elements, wind and fire, then using earth to cause a dust explosion. Her magical sense is amazing, but even so, execution is impossible without proper mastery of the elements. What makes all of this possible is Effarine's talent, Vessel. The ability to use all elements via that bracelet is something anyone in the world would brag about. The real Deculane would be uneasy if he were watching Effarine now. There would be nothing left to wish for if a named virtuoso like her grew properly. He says the result, unfortunately, is very clear, and with that said, not bad at all. Luna is surprised, and Wu announces that this concludes the public practice. Now the apprentices will focus on preparing for the upcoming semester exams. The students say it's the first time Deculane has said something like that. They comment that Effarine really did well. They didn't know she was capable of all that, especially since her duel against Beck was so boring and crap. Luna smiles, wondering if she was recognized. Her peers say she did great, she was awesome, now she's their pride. Later, Ganesha says, there they are. She calls out to Leo and Carlos, saying it's been a while and asking how they've been. A voice responds, it has been a while. The adventurer welcomes her and asks if she missed her. The girl replies, maybe a little. This is Yuria, the girl from the island who Yu-Ara, Wujin's ex-girlfriend, possessed. They greet each other and tease. Yu thinks the light was blinding. That shining light engulfed and erased her, and all the sounds of her world completely vanished. When she opened her eyes again, her original world was gone without a trace. Ganesha asks if Deculane really wants to use a girl like her, saying she could do that kind of job. The guy replies that she shouldn't have accepted the mission then. She fell way too hard for his charm and asks if she knows what the cancellation fee is. Ara thinks these people feel familiar. The personalities and backstories she and her group had created were standing right in front of her. The adventurer introduces herself and asks if she's Ria. Yu is confused, wondering about Ria, and realizes this is Ganesha and the Red Granada adventurers. The hot air and the smell of nature, if she's really inside the game. And she answers yes, saying her name is Yuria. She thinks that's how she became Yuria, a character from the game she created. The adventurer shouts at Leo and Carlos to stop running. Ara thinks she's the best adventurer in this world. First, if you want to die, the best method is to stay by her side, and she has to survive and find a way back. Somewhere else, the protagonist opens a box and says it's finally here. It's a wand for Eucline, dedicated to Eucline, crafted by master artisan Lokalok for Deculane. It can store 500 mana. This wand can be used as a support circuit, naturally increasing spell performance. Kim is impressed and notes its characteristic, aesthetic. The system notifies about the material trait, ironwood, which contains the natural ability and properties of wood. The material's potential is said to be the best among all wood types. Automatic learning assists the caster in independently understanding the magic they use and utilizing it more efficiently. The item is aesthetic. The design isn't very beautiful, but reacts to the wearer's outfit and assumes the best matching color. Wu notices it has a unique trait. More notifications arrive about Eucline's blood language, the extraordinary power of the caster capable of exorcising or banishing demons. Jin says it only cost 9 million elna. At first he thought it was expensive, but now that he's received it, he realizes the wand's value far exceeds its price. It has the beauty and performance of a relic. Then Roy calls him, saying dinner is ready. The protagonist says great, he's coming down. Meanwhile, the table is filled with a feast. Kim sits down and Yariel says she heard their finances weren't doing well, so what's with all this abundance? She says it's more than they usually eat. They need energy to get through this situation. She had it prepared so he could recharge. The servant asks if they didn't sell the antiques he told them to sell earlier and says they were very popular items. All of them received bids the moment they were revealed. It even caused problems at the auction. The lady and he thought they were dreaming. They now have more than enough funds to not worry about the estate for several years. So enjoy this as a token of the lady's gratitude. Wu sighs and says it's delicious. Graham replies that it's good he knows. Later, still at the table, Jin says, that's not how you hold a knife. Later, in Deculane's office, there are papers all over the desk. The protagonist says it's a huge mess. That damn rude Deculane, and thinks that with semester exams coming, he's putting a lot of effort into the test questions. To get ideas, he's looking at old exam questions Deculane made. They're all impossible for rookies. Kim reads that Deculane had written he was the great noble, an incredible mage, and they should despair when looking at his test questions. Wu thinks he could only feel arrogance coming from Deculane's test questions, and to think he can tell how disgusting his personality was just by looking at them. He assumes the original Deculane confused test difficulty with his own sense of superiority, hence these impossible questions were made. But he won't be like him. He wants to make good questions, questions that present a challenging process, and ones that spark a sense of pride once solved. They must have those elements and help foster understanding in mages. As a professor, every one of his actions could be critical to the growth of these new mages. Then, the last box. He wonders what he'll find inside. Jin looks at the paper and widens his eyes, thinking it's different. Completely different from the others. He believes a different person wrote those questions. The difficulty is still high, but they're extremely engaging. With comprehension, he'll understand each one and imbue the correct answers into the magical exam sheet. Then energy is released from the page, growing stronger, forming a shape. The protagonist is surprised and says it's a test where, after solving the questions and imbuing the right answers, an illustration appears. The colors represent the elements, and the solution, harmonizing everything in the test, inspires awe. This is the perfect question for the subject, understanding pure elemental magic. It causes instinctive envy that hurts the heart. He's certain Deculane recognized what kind of perfection this question holds, the beauty he himself couldn't create with his own talent. However, he asks, who is this woman? Elsewhere, someone thinks the topic about the plasma shroud race will be discussed in the next meeting. Elder Berkt Dezekdan. Adeline finds it interesting. Who would have thought the outcome of the discussion on the plasma shrouds would become so significant, thanks to strong resistance against suppressing them? So unexpected, and that includes Professor Deculane. It applies to everyone here. Sigelian is a renowned mage, famous for her immense magic power, and the most promising candidate for Archmage. But despite that, she has a laid-back personality, surprisingly so. She listens to people gossiping about Deculane and the knight Julia getting into a fight, and how Professor Retlan failed his diet again. Adeline's curiosity about mundane topics and love for gossip actually stems from a hidden truth about her origins. She's half fairy. Naturally, this is also the root of her incredible magical power. Despite always grumbling about it, she enjoys days like this. The university president asks if Deculane has aligned himself with the heretics and says it's interesting. She thinks how the professors of the Magic Tower are gathered before the headmistress to give statements. And today is that day. As expected, whenever something weird happens, everyone blames Deculane. The protagonist asks if they're implying that of all people, he, the great Eucline, is trying to show off. Adeline thinks, well, that's what he says. But this time, they'd only mentioned him while he was gone. The man says that at this council of mages, Miss Luina made an appearance. Sigelian recalls that Luina is the woman who once competed with Professor Deculane for the position of head professor, but stepped down voluntarily due to his schemes. It's believed she's now in the kingdom, and she asks about Miss Luina, what brought her back so suddenly, and if she's returning to the Empire. Relin says of course she would return if she had a secured position. If that happens, the Magic Tower will benefit greatly as well. He asks if Miss Luina achieved great things in the kingdom and says that even if Deculane is allying with heretics, that doesn't mean the current head professor is bad or anything. A voice says if Luina comes back, then they'll think about it. Adeline says that's all for today, she has things to do. For professors who haven't submitted their exam questions yet, hurry up. She asks if Deculane has been distracted lately because the test he submitted this time was way too good to be his. No way he did it alone. She plans to give him a hard time about it. And if Luina, his arch-rival, returns too, it would be so entertaining. A few days later, on the day of the Pure Elemental Magic Comprehension exam, inside the room, the students ask if what they heard is true, if this is really a test, and say that it's not normal. They heard rumors about his bizarre exams, but this is surreal. They're just going to give up. The assistant tells them to calm down. He understands their confusion. It's not a typical test, but it's exactly as described. The semester exam for the subject Comprehension of Pure Elemental Magic will be conducted over 10 days. The deadline is midnight of the final Sunday of the academic schedule. Each student will take the test individually in a designated room. They may leave for other exams, meals, or rest, but they cannot take the test out. And as mentioned, it's an open book exam. Julia asks about an open book exam that lasts 10 days. How hard must it be? Ephraim says the previous test was already bad enough. Deculane never gives out anything normal. Alan says the professor also said that if someone gets a perfect score, he'll write a letter of recommendation under the title of head professor. The students are shocked to hear about a letter of recommendation from the head professor. They say that's huge. Archmage ranks go from rank 1, Eternal Archmage, to rank 11, Debutante. But advancing ranks is extremely hard. It's not a system where you rank up by completing courses or waiting over time. You must pass promotion exams each time. And those exams are no joke. It's written on the paper to imagine you're a monarch, a rank 4 Archmage, and received a letter of recommendation from Deculane. It's basically like holding a wild card. It's almost a guaranteed promotion. Luna wonders about getting a recommendation from Deculane, her sworn enemy, and thinks it completely kills her motivation to do well. She doesn't want to be associated with him. No, calm down. If she can get a perfect score and receive Deculane's recommendation, then she'll be able to say, if you hadn't written that letter for me back then, I wouldn't be crawling at your feet now. Ephraim imagines him crawling at her feet and gets excited, wondering if that wouldn't be satisfying. She tells Deculane to wait. She's going to ace this. She gets fired up and laughs loudly. On the 4th day of the exam, Luna's expression has completely changed. She thinks this is really hard. 1 hour, 4 hours, 10 hours. Each new question becomes drastically harder. Still, the questions are brilliant. While solving them is painful, the moment she finds the answer, she feels a sense of achievement like never before. She wonders, did Deculane really make this test? Ephraim thinks, even though it's agonizing, she can't stop. Because of that feeling of fulfillment, she tells herself to just wait. She'll earn that recommendation letter. She says this question she's on makes no sense at all. Maybe she should go outside for some fresh air. Her brain hurts more by the second she sits there. Meanwhile, outside, Sylvia is sitting on a bench saying she finally finished it. Can't believe it took 30 hours to solve one question. She needs a break. She remembers the assistant saying the professor also promised a recommendation letter if someone got a perfect score. Alad says that saying something so absurd like it's some great favor. Anyone who can score full marks on this test wouldn't fail the promotion exam anyway. Even so, she wants to get a perfect score, not for the grade or the letter, but for herself. Each question is beautiful, each one a key to a unique enlightenment. If she can solve them all, she knows for sure she'll grow a lot as a mage. Someone calls out, "It's Ephraim." Sylvia watches her, wondering how far she's gotten. They both ask at the same time how many questions the other has completed. Then they both turn their heads away at the same time. Illide answers first. She's on number 8. Luna is surprised, asks if she already solved it. Sylvia replies she's still finishing it. Ephraim says even so, that's fast. She's stuck on number 7. Illide wonders if that's true or if she's lying. But she tells herself now's not the time to worry about that. She needs to go back and finish the test. Luna asks if she's leaving because of her. Sylvia replies no, she was just resting a bit. While the students of the Magic Tower were in the middle of their exams, Deculane felt a big shift approaching. He was reading a document and said that now it truly begins. He thinks of Emperor Krabaim, who's currently in critical condition, known for being gentle and well-educated, always striving to balance divine and imperial power. He also never enforced harsh policies against the plasma shrouds. The problem lies with the new king who was crowned after him. This king is the most important and most problematic figure in the world, Sophia Nyaratere August von Gebrain. This world is about to undergo a great change. On the final day of the exam, during this period, a large number of students gave up on Deculane's marathon test. However, the distinction between high and low-ranking students was very clear. Regardless of the grades, every student boasted about managing to take this exam as if it were a medal. After the exam ended, the students didn't go enjoy their freedom. Instead, they reflected on what they had learned. This was very unusual and attracted a lot of attention. Even the professors of the Magic Tower wanted to take a look at the test question. At that moment, only 2 students were still trying to solve the final question, number 8, Ephraim and Sylvia. Luna says this damn 8th question is the last push she has to make, but she'll definitely solve it. She can't give up now after all the coffee she drank. She just needs to focus a bit more and pay close attention to the question. Then a light is emitted. The assistant calls out saying that one of them solved the last question, and the protagonist thinks he knew it would be her. In another room, Kim walks in and shuts the door, saying he knew she would manage to solve it and congratulates her. It was Sylvia. Meanwhile, the whole room around her is glowing. These are bright colors full of magical elements. Even from the cold blue tones, warmth can be felt, and under the stars shining with hope in the darkness, they are warm and cold, while also radiant and sharp. It's a true masterpiece. Wu thinks that even though he was the one who made the questions, he couldn't manifest this beauty due to his own limitations. Jin can be found within this question. He dreamed of becoming an artist but lacked talent and wanted to move people with his work, so he kept chasing that dream. That Wu Deculane's aesthetic sense was also embedded in this question. Because of that, both the Deculane who loves beauty and the Kim who once dreamed of attending art school were comforted by what was happening. The protagonist says it was a good job and thanks her. Ilade turns and says she wanted to thank him too. She releases her magic and recalls many people in her mind saying she should become an archmage. Who would have thought she could do this? It's incredible talent, as expected of a family of archmages. In the present, Sylvia says no, that the magic itself is very beautiful. Meanwhile, in the hallway, the assistant opens the door and tells debutante Ephraim that time is up. She replies that she understands and that it's a shame. Alan says she did very well. Only 2 people were left tackling that question to the end. Luna asks, what about Sylvia? Did she solve everything? The assistant nods. Ephraim says she's a monster and admits she's jealous. She stands there thinking that before she knew it, all her thoughts about the recommendation letter and Deculane had disappeared. The only thing left was her curiosity as a mage and the desire for more knowledge. She also wanted to finish the test and says the exam is over, but the question is still there, and she will solve it. She smiles. Alan watches her smiling back and says, good luck. He's rooting for her. Later, Luna walks outside and says she's so tired. This exam marathon? If she had solved all the questions, she'd feel better because of the sense of accomplishment. But the only thing waiting at the end of this complicated test, she remembers standing in front of her door with graffiti on it. People approach her. It's her friends. Julia says it's tradition to relax together after a test. Let's go eat something good. Tears fall from Ephraim's eyes. The redhead asks what's wrong, saying she looks so silly now. Was the test really that hard? Julia keeps watching her and says that since she's the one who made them go have fun so late, she's paying for everything. Luna says not to say that. A few days later, Ephraim releases her magic and says it's beautiful. Someone asks if she's ready. Luna replies, yes. She's heading out. Somewhere else, Julia and Ephraim say thank goodness the test is over. They'll be busy soon, so it's great to have a few days to relax. They're excited about the upcoming trip. Luna thinks that she's glad she didn't give up and managed to solve it. It was the best magical experience she's ever had. The redhead asks if she's heard the news about Professor Deculane. Things went wild because of the exam question. Ephraim asks what she's talking about. Julia says she doesn't know the details, but apparently Professor Deculane was summoned to the floating island. Luna asks about the floating island. This island floats eternally 1,500 meters above the ground. It houses the community of mages and is the pinnacle of magical engineering. It's a pioneering place that birthed the saying, the one that holds the knowledge and magic of the world. Not to mention, it's also an independent zone, outside the influence of any land-based system. Those truly interested in the pursuit of magical knowledge eventually gathered there. With several mages praising Deculane's exam, he became the hottest topic on the floating island. That's how Deculane received an invitation and gave a special lecture on the solution to the question. Elsewhere, the protagonist looks at the sheet and thinks the exam attracted more attention than he expected. And he also received a quest, which is lucky. On top of that, the payment for this lecture is huge, about 1 billion won. He should start considering doing more in this field. It's not a bad idea. He places the paper on the table and says it's a great pleasure to meet them. He is Deculane, a monarch rank mage, rank 4, and a senior professor at the Imperial Tower University in charge of elemental magic. The topic is the university's exam question. This lecture will last 2 hours. But before looking at the question, he'll explain what pure elements are. Adeline asks if he saw the question. A voice says it's plagiarism. It's impossible that Deculane came up with such an amazing question. It's Luina von Schleraut-McQueen. The lecture goes smoothly. Before interpreting the question, he used the same content from the previous class to aid their understanding. The attendees focused on his clear and systematic explanations. Kim says they'll now look at question 6, and that's when it happened. A voice says they have a question. It's the university president. She releases her magic and says that since he said they can differentiate pure elements and types, she forms a magic circle and asks what she needs to do to combine it with the magic from question 6 to make it as destructive as possible. Wu smiles and notes the president is here too, and thinks the reason is obvious. She enjoys these kinds of games. Thinking back to the old Deculane, it's clear she's doubting the authenticity of the question. He wonders if he should entertain her a little. He releases magic, forms a magic circle, and replies that she can simply place a central circuit in a linear shape. Adeline looks surprised and says she understands, and thanks him. After that, Sigelian's questions don't stop, and Jin answers all of them while demonstrating. Fortunately, several mages got annoyed by the interruptions, so she stayed quiet. The protagonist notices there are only 10 minutes left and says it seems he spent too much time answering questions. To make up for the lost time, he won't explain the final question. Someone raises their hand to ask a question. It's Lunia, asking if he thinks the ideas in question 8 are valid. Kim looks at her and tells her to explain better. Schleraut says that's exactly what they heard. She wants to know if he personally came up with and wrote question 8. The crowd looks surprised and starts asking what she means. Was the question plagiarized? Wu says it's common to be inspired by ideas that aren't your own. However, he unleashes extremely powerful and stunning magic and says it's all his. People stare in awe and say it's beautiful. Jin says that since he just created that on the spot, it's different from what's written in question 8. Luina looks irritated and the protagonist asks if that answers her question. Schleraut grits her teeth. Kim says that's the end of the lecture. He walks away and the system rewards him with 30 more mana for completing the event mission. Wu thinks that, according to the scenario, Deculane and Luina didn't get along. Nothing major happened today, but he's sure trouble will arise soon, and Deculane has far too many enemies. Then he comes across someone in front of him and wonders who she is. She looks familiar. The girl looks uneasy and Jin wonders why she seems nauseous. Then he remembers. She was a freshman when Deculane was at the university. He reaches out his hand, calling her Charlotte and saying it's been a while. She replies she didn't think they were close enough to call each other by name. The protagonist asks if Princess Maho would be better, and thinks he doesn't care if she and Deculane were close or not. He doesn't need to know. What matters is the Princess Maho that Charlotte carries. Emperor Krabaim will pass away soon, and this moment is a major turning point in the game. Many named characters will face life or death events, and new incidents will unfold. The named person he must save is Maho. She's one of the characters he designed, and she'll become a major figure with a positive influence on the main quest in the latter half of the game. Due to her complex bloodline, being second in line to the throne of the Republic of Urin, and third for the throne of the Kingdom of Laok, she's a princess constantly followed by the plasma. Currently, she's staying in the Empire under the excuse of studying, but when the Emperor dies and she leaves the Empire, she'll be in danger. Charlotte says he still has the gift of forcing people to say cruel things to him, even after all this time. The protagonist extends his hand, giving her something, and tells her not to get worked up. He'll become the one who saves the chosen companion walking the path of the end. Later, Charlotte is holding an orb, realizing it's a crystal communication ball, and remembers him saying he would help once she decided what to do and contacted him. At that moment, Charlotte got irritated and asked if he was telling her to ask for help from someone as disgraceful as him, saying it was impossible. Kim says there's no time, and he's sure she knows that too. But if she still doesn't like it, there's nothing he can do. She should do whatever she wants. In the present, Charlotte sighs and someone approaches saying she doesn't look well. It's the princess. Charlotte says it's nothing. The princess replies that she knows what's going on and tells her not to stress. Her brother's supporters will arrive soon and will either try to use her or get rid of her, and asks, who even cares about the throne succession? She says she's nervous. She came to the Empire under the excuse of studying, but it's actually a great place to live. More importantly, it's safe. However, the next emperor won't leave her alone, so they need to leave quickly. Charlotte agrees. The princess looks at her and hands her a suitcase, saying it's the money she saved up until now. Charlotte, confused, asks why she's giving it to her. The princess says she knows she's low on funds after hiring escort mercenaries for the return trip. Charlotte says no, she'll do whatever it takes to get the money. The princess tells her not to carry the burden alone, that money is for all of them, so it's not a waste at all. Charlotte looks at her and says she understands, and that it might not be proper to say this, but she'll use that money to hire more mercenaries. No matter the danger they face, together they can, until she notices something, opens the window and asks who's that guy down there. The hooded man runs off. Charlotte thinks this is getting more dangerous. If she can't get help, somewhere else Wu is sitting, reading a book, until Yariel approaches and says he's reading a lot. Doesn't remember him being into that kind of hobby. She calls out to him and says she heard he gave a lecture on the floating island and got paid for it. Jin says he's not giving her a single cent. Graham says she wasn't even thinking of that. Either way, an official document arrived. The debutantes of the Magic Tower University want to visit the Hyde Cane territory for their trip. The protagonist says no. She tells him to at least consider the idea. Kim imagines young people drinking and vomiting and says cleanup is impossible on those trips. He won't allow it. Yariel asks what he's even talking about and tells him to stop being difficult and just look at the document. It's not like they're doing it for free, and it's an opportunity to show the Magic Tower to the debutantes. Wu tells her to get out. Graham insists, saying he should at least take a look. Jin glares and tells her to leave now. Yariel instantly says she got it and walks off. The protagonist glances sideways, realizing she's gone. And, with the stone in hand, he tells his colleague to speak. Charlotte says she thinks they need to leave now, there's no time, and asks if he can help. Kim asks if she's going to listen to every word he says. Charlotte asks what he means by that. Wu says Princess Maho has only one way out. It's a very dangerous route, but that also means it'll be safe. She asks what it is. Jin replies, Crevice Canyon. Charlotte looks shocked and says that place is infested with demonic energy. He should know that, being Deculane of all people after all the losses. The protagonist asks if she thinks she can prevent her eliminations by taking a regular route and tells her to trust him. They're going through Crevice Canyon. The canyon crevice, with its rugged terrain and dense demonic energy, and being near a demon's dwelling, is often said to be a place where demons occasionally appear, and it's considered an independent area. The protagonist believes this is the only route for Princess Maho. If they pass through the canyon crevice, they'll reach the Republic of Urin quickly, and he mentions that he had already thought about the geographical advantage. They communicate through the stone, and Charlotte says she said that, assuming Euclid wouldn't come. Kim tells her not to worry, that he himself will personally guide them through there. Charlotte asks if he's really going, and Wu replies yes. Charlotte is surprised and asks why he's doing this since there's not much he could gain from it. Jin answers that he's quite interested in politics and also much smarter and more perceptive than he is. Charlotte says he's talking crap about her out of nowhere. The protagonist replies that he just wants her princess to survive so her family and territory can benefit. He's not just guarding her, it's a deal, and she doesn't need to be ridiculous. Charlotte asks when they'll meet. Kim says 3 days from now at the entrance of Crevice. If they can't get there on their own, then they don't deserve to live. Charlotte agrees and says she hopes he can deliver as promised. 3 days later, in another location, people are praising Hyde-Kan and say it feels like a completely different country with an amazing view. The capital of the state of Yukline, Hidekane, is a tourist destination widely known for its food and activities. It was designed to reflect real-world cities known for being good places to live. Because of this, it was proposed several times as a location for school trips, but Deculine rejected them. Someone approaches Wu and asks why the sudden change of heart since he had declined all previous school trip proposals. Jin thinks it's because it's near Canyon Crevice, only 3 to 4 hours away by horse, so he can slip away when the opportunity arises. He asks where the debutantes are staying. The girl replies that they booked an entire floor at the Hyde Cane Romance Hotel. There will be 4 students per room, but they can get private rooms if they pay out of pocket. As a professor from the Magic Tower and the Lord of Hidekine, the protagonist did the minimum by giving a tour. He explains that these trips need to be flexible, so he won't interfere with what they do. However, the moment they mess up the hotel or his territory, they'll never laugh again during their days in the Magic Tower. After that, Kim spent time stabilizing the foundation to turn Hyde Cane into an outpost. The Magic Tower students ask how they did and say they're the best of all the local towers. Kim sees a golden glow in the skilled mages with sharp discernment and wealth, and tells them to increase one mage's salary and fire the other. After spending the day enjoying what Hyde Cane had to offer, dusk arrived. Sylvia shows off her magic, launching fireworks into the sky. Retland says, as expected from her, she has no flaws and gives 10 points. The other judge says those fireworks were wonderful and also gives 10 points. The redhead asks why teachers are assigning activities during a trip. A random firework display, Luna says she knows. And the next group is Epharine's. She says they created a firework of destruction until a voice tells her to stop. Luna is confused and it's Retland telling her to skip the boring explanation and just go. Then they begin the display. The fireworks launched into the sky are incredibly beautiful. The students watch and also say it's very pretty and that she's good too. Retland gives 6 points because it was too loud. The judge gives 4 points. Julia asks why, and Epharine says it's fine. The protagonist gives 10 points, saying the balance between ductile and destructive magic was good. The redhead is surprised by the 10 points. Luna is also surprised but remains silent. Still at night, Kim is preparing a horse, realizing he can leave now, and wonders if Charlotte is safe on her route too. Ephraim approaches and asks if it's because of some debt. Wu looks back and asks what brings her there at this hour and tells her to go back. Luna says to tell her, during the disciplinary hearing, the club room, and today, asks why he's doing this, and if it's because of her father. Jin mounts his horse and replies that she can find out on her own since she's an independent child. The horse walks away, and Ephraim shouts that she's applying to be his assistant, that she'll do whatever it takes to expose him because her father took his own life, and because of that, she'll surpass him and become stronger than him. Then she goes quiet, losing sight of him. The protagonist stops the horse and wonders if she'll really become Deculane's assistant, thinking the villain's fate isn't set in stone. Even he doesn't know exactly what happened between Deculane and her father, and wonders what to do if it was something unforgivable. He tells the horse it can't continue because of the demonic energy and that it should return to the stables and come back at dusk. He wonders if the princess's group has arrived and whether he should contact her via the crystal ball, until someone calls him. Kim turns around and says it was a good job getting there. It's Charlotte, a boy covered in plasma, and the princess, unharmed. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new content. Thank you.